Just heard. What's up, everybody? We are live, episode 166 of the Jiu-Jitsu podcast.
I'm double checking to make sure everything is working properly here. Let's see, because there's a little bit of a lag time before it goes.
There we go.
We're
People
good.
are coming on.
We're good. So while we're waiting for everybody to get here, we'll get ready to chat and hang out. I usually have a bunch of rice cooked.
Rice.
Yeah, rice. And, because I watch my diet and I had to eat a meal before I came in here because I don't want to get cranky.
Yeah.
And I did not have rice made. So I had to get some carbs in. So I on the way here, I took about because my meal today was supposed to have, for my second meal was going to have about 40 grams of carbs. So I took dry oats. Dry, like the quick instant oats.
Yeah.
Plain, of course.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I was driving, I was just kind of eating them and drinking water with it just to get the carbs in. I know, right?
Savagery going on. Yeah, people are coming in.
McConley balls. That's
Sweet.
Really real profound.
Yeah. We got Ronnie. What's up, Ronnie?
Ronnie
And,
Grimes. Hey,
Kentucky Creek Fisher. It's Peyton. I don't know who Peyton is.
Peyton's one of the guys at the gym.
All right.
He's
I know Ryan. Ryan had a birthday today,
Ryan.
or
did he have a birthday?
yeah, I think today's.
I'm so bad. I don't pay attention to Facebook, and Facebook's usually where everybody finds.
Oh
it.
yeah.
Jess always goes. She goes, "It's so and so's. It's so and so's birthday." You know.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, cool. I don't go Facebook as much as I once used to.
Yeah. Well, people are gonna come
Mike,
on in, but
Mike, I don't know how to say your name because your name's popped up.
Scrivener.
Okay, so Scrivener. That's probably the best. I was like Scrivener. So anyway, I hope the camp is going to be the camp's going to be a blast. But excited
Sold
to have
out.
you guys there. Sold out in 24 hours. So we had the camp. In case you guys didn't know, it's kind of a test thing for me. Like, I have some ideas of what I want to do with it, and we'll have some fun with it. But I wanted to do a camp back in 2020, but then old Captain COVID came around. I was like, nope.
Captain COVID. He's back.
Yeah, he never really
They're
left.
back. Well,
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, it's like the whole circus show that is that thing. It's like, it's a mess, bro. Well, it's like so funny because it's I've never seen something so weird and politicized.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's one guy I watch who, like, he basically hates like all politicians basically, and he was basically like had the because everybody likes to make it all nice and tidy left and right. That's what basically it's come for, even though it shouldn't be that way. But someone was like on the left, like back when Trump was talking about the vaccine towards the end of his presidency, they're like, oh, this vaccine's not been tested, blah 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 blah. And then, like, as soon as it flips into office, you better get vaccinated. It's like, okay, well, it's like, you guys are just you guys just hop and jump depending on what your political thing is from time to time. So, but that said, in 2020, we're going to do it, didn't do it. And so I'm excited to actually have it. It's something that I want to make a regular thing potentially. And it's a way to sort of meet people, because there's this cool experience that happens when people come into the gym. We just had this past weekend. So we had Muhammad in for a seminar, and a couple guys came down to the gym who had watched the videos. They've been training for about a year and a half, 2 years. And when they came in, they were like, oh man, you could see them, they're looking around. They're like, I can see the lower half of you, because they always see me talking in the videos, and they're looking at the gym and the mats and everything else. And it was a cool experience for them that they're going through, and we got to roll together. Yeah. That's a cool thing.
Sure.
And so, and also here's something to consider. I'm getting older. So I don't have, it's not like, I'll be able to hang out and chat and stuff, but actually being able to roll with people, like, just all the time, that's going away eventually, right? So I can't do that forever. So I'd like to have these chances to meet with people and roll with them and exchange that, because that's a limited resource. There's only so much of that can go around. So I'd like to actually meet people, roll with them before I get too old to do it. And so I wanted to run these camps, and so it's going to be fun. So we're going to do a mixture of jiu-jitsu training. We'll have some Wim Hof breathing on one of the days. We'll have some get-togethers and dinners, and then we may even on one of the nights do a meditation session following the training, just depending on the interest of everybody. We'll also have my students in there. I haven't really told my students that I'm running a camp really yet. Like, so they said they were in my email list, and they're like, "Chewy, what is this camp thing about?" I'm like, "I'll tell you later. Like, I just want to get this thing going first," and that. But that said, guys, we'll jump into this. So I wanted to, we're continuing on. If you guys don't listen to the podcast, if for some reason you're on YouTube right now and you don't listen to the podcast as much, I've been sort of doing this rules for, jiu-jitsu. I have an actual course on that. Like it's got like 20, but we're getting into like both the sort of the philosophical ideas and also the actual specific training things. But we'll jump into one, possibly two today. The first one that we'll jump in today is on grips. And so my sort of underlying philosophy towards rolling is always grips first, And it makes sense when you think about it, but I'll give you a couple stories to think about. So one of them is, it comes from like a multitude of different experiences I've had, but basically like a lot of times when I go to seminars, whenever I'm whenever I'm traveling, right, going to a different school, meeting different people, one of the first things I always like doing is I like sitting there and just rolling with people and just like fighting for grips with them before I actually do anything else. And if you're aware enough, you'll start to notice what grips they're fighting for. You know what they find important, what they want, what they're trying to get on you, what kind of positions they're trying to play. Yeah. And if you get really good at it and you understand like the important grips of which ones you need to block, which ones you need to stop, then you can shut someone's game down just by matter of their grips. For instance, like if you play against someone that's really good in bottom half, if they're either a sweeper that gets underneath of you, or if they're like a good framer, they frame up and they make space and go for triangles and sweeps and submissions, then you understand probably that top arm is crucial. Have to have it. Yep. You cannot let them use their top arm dominantly. If they're more of a leg locker, you've got to watch that bottom arm more often, because that bottom arm will come under and hook under your leg and they'll shoot up underneath of your body. So if you block those two things and find different ways, it shuts down a lot of stuff for them just by nature of that. And to me, grips are not just like hand grips and grips on the gi, but also your underhooks, your overhooks, hand positioning when you're in a different position. That's all part of the grip game to me, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, because yes, the grips are here with your hands, but also like, how do you position your body? And that's why like I created like a little beginner course for it on my website. I was like, this is something that's really important. And recently, one of my guys, one of my students, Rick came up to me. It was just last night, actually. We were talking and he said, I don't know if you know the impact of your emails and stuff, right? Because he's on the email list. He's like in the videos and stuff. But I traveled recently, and he's a white belt. I was like, I was traveling recently, and I went to this gym, and I was able to roll with some of their higher belts that are higher than him, right? And he said, like one of the things that was kind of playing in my head was, these guys are better than me, so I'm going to just see if I can control their grips. And he's like, he started doing that, and he was able to get some techniques on them, right? He's actually able to get the better of some of them by being very dominant with their grips. Now, he was like, I don't know how experienced they are or whatever, but like, different belt than me, they were higher than me. So, he was pretty stoked about that, and again, that's the thing. A lot of times, if you're really good with the way that you position your grips and fight for the grips, sometimes you can kind of, you can punch above your weight class, or essentially perform above your skill level, if you will. Because if you're stopping the person from getting what they're after, then it's really hard for them to get anything going. And you can think about it this way. A lot of times when we do a technique, it always starts with like, we're going to grab this, put our body here, do this, that kind of thing. And that's always the first thing we start with. But it really doesn't a lot of times get enough attention during training. People just kind of think of it as an afterthought. Like, it's not very sexy. It's not sexy to it's not sexy to fight underhooks, until you win the battle. It's sexy to like, I'm going to do this flip over thing and take the back. Right. Like, cause I mean, like, to be honest, like for instance, like when I teach half guard, if I tell the guys to fight for the underhooks, I'll tell them like, if you fight for that underhook and you just keep fighting for that, if the whole match you fought for that underhook, I wouldn't be upset with you, because you were doing the right thing. Right. Granted, it's not going to happen, because if you fight for something that much, eventually someone's discipline is going to break, and they're going to stop fighting for it. And then that means they give up the position. But again, I think grips first approach is really important, because when you do that, when you focus on the grips first, not only can you begin to sort of read what your opponent's doing, you can start to notice like, which hand are they trying to grab with? Man, they really want to get that right hand in my collar. Well, that tells you don't want them to have that right hand in the collar, because there's probably a reason they want it there. And also, if you're really good at getting your grips, then your moves are available to you. Because for instance, like one of the things, if you're competing is an example, and I'm using competing, this could just be rolling, but we'll use competing as an example, since it represents one of the more stressful situations that jiu-jitsu can offer us. which then again, like really starts to show your flaws and your positives as well. Well, when you're going, you should be thinking about how to get to your grips to set everything up. Because again, if your move begins with the grips, then your starting point should be get to grips, right? So for instance, if I'm on my feet when I'm in a tournament, I have about 3 or 4 takedowns that I really search for, right? In a guard pull if I need it. Those I have those things that I need. So what am I doing when I'm on the feet? I'm not fighting for any other. I'm not just like aimlessly pummeling through for underhooks and overhooks and everything else. What I'm doing is I'm going for very particular grips to try to get to. And as soon as I have those grips, I'm going to attack. I'm going to go for my move, right? That's what I'm looking for. As soon as I get my body into position, I have my grips, I go. And if you understand that, then basically, it's essentially you're just battling. And then as soon as you get your grips, you're ready for the technique. And then boom, you go. Opposed to just simply fighting aimlessly for different grips and not really having any reason as to why you're doing it. Now, there's times where if you're playing around in the gym and trying to try stuff out, you can play around. But if you're trying to be effective, you can take that grips first approach and really think about, okay, what grips do I need versus this position or to hit my move or whatever. And when you do that, in your mind, you're ready for the technique to happen as soon as you get the grips. Right. And then you can go. Because there's no thinking about like, what am I going to do? Am I going to do this? It's like you have the technique in your mind, your best technique, and then you're just trying to fight for those grips first. You're not fighting for the technique, you're fighting for the grips. And once you get the grips, then you go. And I think that for me always, it makes it a lot easier when I'm grappling, because if I know, like if I basically zero in on a specific technique and then I go backwards and zero into the smallest component of it, which is the grips, then it becomes much easier to hit those techniques. Because, when you think about like, I need to pass someone's guard, that can be a tall order. Where if it's like, I just need to get my hands on their knees like this and this hand on the hip, and then that's not as big of a deal. But that's what starts the guard pass off. And so, that's typically what I'm looking for when I'm setting things up. And I think it's a really useful approach and something that made a big difference in my game. So when I started fighting for grips, it came about really after we had a Japanese student named Mash. His name is Mashashi Takahashi. But we call it Mosh.
I feel like you're mispronouncing it.
I probably am, but no, but it's Mashashi Takahashi. I'm probably saying it wrong. I'm probably saying it wrong, or probably saying like a slack-jawed Kentuckian, right? Yeah. Mashashi Takahashi. But
it's true.
It's right. But the thing is I remember he came into the gym and he was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and a black belt in judo. Right. And I remember him doing battles, like doing judo classes, because I asked him to do some judo, and like we would get in these battles for grip fighting. And I really enjoyed that. I was like, man, this is neat. And around this time, I'm also a black belt, and I'm struggling the black belt division. Right? I'm struggling because it's like I just am. I remember doing all this grip fighting and really getting obsessed with it. I thought it was just it is such a weird thing to get obsessed with. Right. Most people get obsessed with like really cool stuff. I'm getting obsessed with like breaking grips off my gi and fighting for hand control and stuff like on another level. And I remember doing that for like 6-8 months and then going to competitions in like 2012. And all of a sudden, I'm just knocking. I went against a judo black belt and a jiu-jitsu black belt, judo black belt, and like was taking him down left and right, getting grips on him. Because again, I was fighting for the grips. Yeah. And I've even had judo guys come and train with me. You're like, man, did you do judo? I was like, no. I was like, I did a little bit, but mainly just fighting for it. And so it's a really useful thing that made a big difference in my game, especially even at black belt. Because at black belt, like guys are honed in, they're fighting for very specific things. So you got to be really good at stopping them from getting the grips. And then you got to be really good at asserting your grips. Right. And the sooner you can do that, the earlier, the better. And so I think it's a really good approach to keep in mind when you're training, when you're rolling, when you're trying to be the most effective you can be, both understanding what grips do you need and what grips do they need? Be able to read your opponents so you can stop their grips, understanding which hand, like be mindful of their hand positioning and what they keep trying to do. Because a lot of times if you break a grip off and they keep trying to go for it, usually it's a good sign that that's what they want. And you need to fight like hell to dominate that grip. And likewise, being able to then put yourself in the position where you get your grips and you're ready to go for your technique that you want.
One thing that I think you do, and I always complain about your grips. They're annoying. Because you get your grips, you get to take the match where you want to. The thing you do is, I don't want to say it's almost like a fake grip. You do one grip to elicit a reaction, and then you get your grip. So and this isn't necessarily a fake grip, but you will use one hand to open up the lapel
Mhm.
and to get a deeper grip in,
Right.
versus, just going for the grip and then they fight it off because they anticipate, the initial movement. So I think that's one thing that I've learned from you in your grip fighting was like, to go for something that's maybe not necessarily what you want, but elicit the reaction.
Mhm.
And then once you get the grip you want, then go from there. And also you develop a timing. Like when you said you were working your grips, your timing was like, boom, boom. It was like quick. It was like not, oh, I've got my grip. What do I do now? It was like, I've got my grip. I'm going. So it basically you're ahead. It's just like, movements. It's just like any position. Like if you're ahead in the position, you've got the, maybe underhooks or what have you, you're going to take it where you want to take it. They're just going to be defending. So it's kind of like they're playing defense. You're forcing some defense out of them. So I think that's one of the things that's been helpful for me. Just the kind of like the fake grip almost.
Fake grip. No, it's good. There's a couple different feints that I'll use, and a lot of
it's kind of like like feints in
it's
boxing.
like fighting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the idea from it. Like because in boxing, a lot of times, like what you can do as boxing is you can move a punch into a certain place to elicit a reaction, which then gets the person to block or move a certain way, which then allows you to hit in the way that you originally want it to be. Everything going all right?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if
someone getting out of hand.
I don't know.
We will ban you.
I don't know. We're not. We'll go back to it. Just let us know on the comments if somebody's being.
If someone's being disruptive and being a turd burger, let Eugene know he'll get rid of them.
I'll try. I'll keep an eye on it.
But like in boxing, right? Sometimes like you might like feint. You can do like a move, or you could even sometimes throw out like a really like you might like for instance. There's one punch combination. My favorite punching comment. Yeah, get rid of that dude. Block him. God, it's so
Let's not do that.
It's like, who are these people? Like
yeah.
I always wonder who like the basement dwellers are. Like I wish I could just see them, but let's go back to it. So with that said, in boxing, a lot of times, like one of my favorite combos in boxing was a 1-2 punch and then not even really going for it. And I would roll under into a left hook. I used to love that punch because I was like the 1-2, I didn't even really want them. I just wanted their guard to come in more straight. So this way I could go around for the hook on the outside. And with in jiu-jitsu, I've done the clap before. You know, yeah. I've done the clap before, and then they'll like go up to, it's like their hands pop up, and then you go for the grip, or going for the grip I don't really want. So again, like I'll grab a lapel or whatever, and naturally people's hands go to defend what's coming at them, and then going through. But even going back to the punching thing, when I go for grips, when I'm really fighting for them, I don't sort of just casually reach out. I'm like punching. I'm literally like punching and grabbing the collar or grabbing the grip that I want. So
what's going on here? I don't know what's going on. Who is this person?
Well, it's not. Is it just? Are those just old posts?
I don't know.
I think those are just old posts.
Hold on, guys.
Because I don't think it keeps coming up.
Yeah, it keeps coming up. It's like over and over.
See if you can put it in timeout.
I did. Okay. All right. Well, sorry guys. Somebody's being a jerk on the comments. I apologize for that.
Is there any way to turn them off?
I'm trying, man. Just turn off comments or
okay. Yeah, just turn off the comments for now.
Let's see if that doesn't do it.
This is so strange.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly how to hold on, guys. I'm not sure how to. This is crazy.
This is the fun part of doing a live show.
I don't get it. Like I don't know what's going on. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get some of this stuff out of here. Give us a second.
It's so random. It just
keeps trying to.
Buddy, I don't think we're gonna have to. We're probably gonna have to restart or something. Go down.
I can't stop it.
God, what's coming from different people now? So it's probably we're just being spammed. Did you see you popped it up? Oh man, people. God, it's so weird that someone would spend their time.
Sorry, guys. Somebody's being really an ass. So,
I mean, let's be honest. Like, let's continue with what we're doing, bro. Just stop.
Okay,
just stop.
All right.
Some dude's out there, and like you can't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk. Yeah.
All right. So
because we're gonna sit here and play around the internet.
I know I'm gonna keep trying to block them. So anyway. Here's
just a basement dweller without a dirt girlfriend.
A wrestling thing, you know, that wrestlers would do to me all the time.
Yeah.
And I started doing back is like the palm to the head, the forehead.
Yeah.
And I'll do it just to distract. Sometimes it's useful to maybe keep distance, like, right, use the hand just to kind of distract and keep a little distance possibly. But more than anything, when it's used against me, it's to get my hands up or distract me up there.
Here's something. If you tap the person's head, they naturally close their eyes. So just stop. Okay.
So it's a reaction.
People will naturally close their eyes. Like, for instance, like if you tap someone's head, a lot of times they blink, and a blink, that's a fraction of a second. You could be like, you can tap and then go right after the leg on like a sweep single or something.
Yeah.
You know, but even if it's not on the feet, with your grips and stuff like that on the ground, like for instance, if you're inside someone's guard, if you're trying to break the guard, but you allow someone to get a deep hand in the collar, it's gonna be bad news for you, especially if they know what they're doing with it. Bad news. So again, it's one of those things where you need to simply fight that out first before you continue. And again, that's why it's like it's good to read the thing. So did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think about, you know, some people when they train gi and no gi grip wise, they're like, well, I want to use grips that are universal, that work both gi and no gi, right? Which can be good. But also, like today I was teaching class and we were doing some side control. It was in the gi. I was showing some of my lapel stuff I like to do. And I was like, you got the lapel, use it. You know, when you don't have it, you got to know what to do, but don't get so dependent on lapel grips, you know, that when you go to no gi, you don't know what you're doing. Have a variety, right? But I think it's just, you know, when you have those grips in the gi, use them because they can be useful. Like, take advantage of it. Don't always, because some people are like, I don't know, but I don't want to fool with the grips, things like that. So I think it's very valuable to, you know, to have a good, you know, training, I guess, both gi and no gi. You get that knowledge base as well.
I think, you know, Dean Lister, I think he was the one that said it. I think that's where I originally read it. Dean Lister was saying that, you know, when you're training, to just simply work on trying to make sure that your game's transferable from one to the other.
Right. Absolutely.
That said, when you're in the gi, you play around with the grips, right? You play around with them. If nothing else, it's going to help you with like creativity, you know, because there is a certain thing about just like, there's a certain element where people get locked into, this is especially true because as we get older in our lives, we have been told that there is a right and a wrong way to do everything.
Right.
So we don't want to try different stuff. We want to have we want someone to lay out that easy, like, tell me the thing I'm supposed to do right now. Right. Jiu-Jitsu, sometimes like the coach can do that. They can say, hey, like, here's something to do. But at the same time, there's a lot of different routes you can take, and you can dive down different rabbit holes. And sometimes you need to just play around and see what happens. Right. You don't need to have the rigidity of it being wrong or right. It's just like, let's try something. You know, and so, you know, sometimes like when you play around with the gi, like for me, I'll play around with the gi. I don't really, using hardcore lapel grips and like worm guards and stuff is not a fixture of my game as far as like a mainstay. I'll play around with it. Sometimes I'll try stuff out so I know how to defend it. Should I go against someone? But also sometimes there's a certain level of creativity. It's just fun to play around with stuff because sometimes, and this happens with people, this happened with me a bunch when I was younger. I would go into something and say, you know what? I'm not going to use that because I don't, you know, I would make some sort of reason as to why I'm not going to use that. And then come fast forward a couple of years later, I'm using that thing. It was like, for instance, I remember the butterfly guard sweep, like from like the guard, like basically a butterfly sweep down or a guard pull to butterfly sweep. I remember seeing that. I was like, that's not gonna work. I'm not gonna use that. It became one of my best moves. You know, it's like, but I would just wrote it off because it didn't look like is part of what my rigid thinking was for my game at the time.
Yeah.
Even like some of the rolly back takes, I remember seeing them for the first time. I was like, not gonna use that. Now it's like my favorite thing to do. It's like any way that I can do a rolling back take, like I love it. It's my favorite, you know? So again, it's just one of those things where even if like with the grips, even if you're, and sometimes here's another thing, I've got a tricky little grip. If you guys have my, my wrestling for BJJ course, this is in there. I have a really interesting grip that I use for my arm drag to inside trip.
Okay.
It's not a conventional grip, but I love it. And it gives me really good control of their hands. And basically it's a thumb up, thumb down grip. So like one grip's in a really kind of, it looks awkward, but it really works really well. And for the reasons, because I'm able to separate the grips and I'm able to have good inside control with it. But meanwhile, one of the grips feels less threatening than the other. And if you watch my matches since 2000 and probably 2016, I've probably hit that takedown, no less than 10, 12 times. And that was like the way I hit it. I figured it out. Now here, how did I figure it out? I figured it out because I was just playing around.
Yeah.
Right. I started using this different grip. I was like, well, that's neat. That worked out really well. And most people don't fight it as much. And if they try to fight it, it's actually kind of hard. And so again, playing with it. So again, sometimes when you allow you allow the relaxedness and just getting rid of the rigidity of your thinking and just play around with stuff, even if it's not necessarily going to be something you're always going to use, you don't know where that goes, because that ability to play is really useful long term. Even if you don't plan to necessarily use that position like for the long haul, playing around with stuff will give you a better overall knowledge to draw from. It's kind of like it's like, for instance, a lot of times people want to read books. I've been guilty of this. They want to read a book because they want some immediate benefit, right? Like they want this thing to pop out. Like, I need to read the book that's going to give me this X, right? But sometimes what happens is when you read different books from different places and you just read them, all of a sudden you start to draw from a wider sort of, you're drawing from a wider area of information.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get profound like insights from books that you weren't expecting. You're like, I was just reading this thing for enjoyment. Man, there was this really useful idea for me. And so I think sometimes it can be like that, where when you stop trying to look for something all the time, sometimes you find it, but again, you can play around with the grips, and sometimes you'll find neat ways to set up moves. Also, when you play around with grips, if you can find a way to do the same move with different grips, people a lot of times they're less sensitive to those grips, because typically there is a conventional way to do a lot of movements, right? Well, if you can figure out an unconventional grip setup to it, then what happens is when you're rolling with someone full speed, a lot of what we're doing is going off a feel, right? It's muscle memory. So if someone feels a certain grip, that's a lot of times how we know that something's up.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, that shotgun armbar that I do, if you don't know the feeling of that move, it'll sneak up on you, because I'm not actually grabbing your arm to begin with. I'm grabbing your shoulder. So It feels like I'm just trying to hold you down. And all of a sudden I'm sitting back for the armbar, right? It'll sneak up on you if you've never felt it. Now, if you know what to feel for, you're like, oh, my arm's in danger. Mm-hmm. But like the first time I hit anybody in that, they don't see it coming. And so likewise with that inside trip I was talking about, I'm using an unconventional grip setup. So they don't feel it the same as they would if I was using the conventional grip setup. Same way. So if you can find, like, when you're playing around with techniques, and this is more of like a later stage, because what happens with you're using techniques is in the beginning, let's say if I teach 10 students a technique, mm-hmm. each one of them is going to do it wrong in a different way, right? There's going to be tons of variety amongst it. Then eventually they'll keep doing it, and I keep teaching them, and eventually they'll do it just like Chewy showed them, right? They'll do it perfectly. There'll be standardization. Now, if all 10 of them keep doing it for a long period of time to the point where they kind of master that technique, there's then going to be this variety that's going to pop back out, because their games are different, their bodies are different, their styles are going to be slightly different. And so you're going to see different versions of that technique pop up at that point. And then that's kind of like when you're talking about changing grips up, that's kind of like an in-game type thing, mm-hmm. right? That's like, hey, we've got the mechanics down solid for the basic version. Let me play around with variation again. That's the creativity loop. It's basically variety, standardization back to variety, right? Changes later on.
I think one thing that just came to mind is, when you roll with a white belt,
yeah,
and they get your grips,
mm-hmm.
what's their grip? What do their grips feel like to you?
They feel tight, and they
yes.
feel shaky because they're squeezing so hard.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. So it's the relaxation. If you're relaxed with a grip, mm-hmm. doesn't feel as threatening sometimes. Like
sure.
If I grab like
mm-hmm.
your, a pant leg, or, even cross collar, I'm not, that's usually a red flag for most people.
Right.
But sometimes if you're not really,
if you do like that baseball choke where you grab it real loose, they don't feel it coming.
Yeah. So that's the thing, like the being relaxed, your grips, number one, you're not going to fatigue yourself as quickly. You're going to be able to have, more endurance with your grips, and you'll develop that anyways as you train jiu-jitsu. And the other piece is that, like, you're going to be more, it's going to be more unassuming. People aren't going to really feel it. Like when I grab, like if I'm underneath and, we're grabbing like the pants, the inside mm-hmm. of the pants or the knee, and I'm going for a sweep, I'm usually very much, I try to do it in a way that they don't feel it. Because I don't want them to fight it. I want them to not be aware of it. And then by the time they realize it's there, they're getting swept.
Yeah. Well, that's a sort of a concept that I call flying under the radar. So basically, if you can, like, for instance, here's a great example. Like when you do the, or when I do the flower sweep.
Yes.
Right. I'll literally lay back. So I sell this thing. Like I'll lay back there. I'll grab. So typically I'm dominant with my right hand. So I'll grab my right hand right below their knee. I'll grab their pant leg, right? If it's gi, if it's not, I'll kind of have my hand getting ready to hook under their hamstring. The other hand will get a really loose sleeve grip, right? I'll have the hand on the sleeve, but real loose, or the back of the elbow.
Yeah.
And I'll literally lay back as if I'll try to breathe heavy. I'll try to like really sell it. I want them to think that I'm tired or something.
I don't buy it ever.
So and then what'll happen is as soon as they try to like break the guard and they start to move, boom, I'll get really tight at the moment they move, and then I'll go because they don't feel the grips.
Exactly.
And so again, with that's I call it flying under the radar because they don't sense it. They don't detect anything. So they just go along for the ride, and then they don't stop anything. And that's a useful thing. And it's also, here's an idea to think about the grips too. When you have those white belts, right? They squeeze like for life and death because they have no, it's not their fault. They're just new. I did the same thing because when we're new, you've not transversed the area that is jiu-jitsu, right? You haven't gone down the road trip of jiu-jitsu. So you don't have a map for it. You don't have any experience with it. It's like it would be like driving in a brand new city on a road you've never been in with tons of traffic. You're going to be gripping and white knuckling that. You're just like you're going to be on edge because you're like, oh my God, this is intense, right? Same thing for jiu-jitsu. It's like guys come in, they've never done it before. They don't know what's going to be the next twist and turn. The more you train, the more routine things become. There's pattern recognition, especially as someone is doing jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. There's formulated patterns that you get into and you fill it out, right? And you start to see that there's only so many different ways that the person might move.
Sure.
Because they don't want to break the sort of the rules of jiu-jitsu and some of the concepts. But one of the things about gripping is if you can remember this, I heard it used this way. This is really effective. So this pin right here, and this is the way that I remember hearing it explained to me, which I thought was useful. The pin that I'm holding right now, and if you're not watching the video, I'm holding a pin. The pin that Eugene takes away from me because I fiddle with too much. And you take it away from me today.
I take the top away. I leave the pin.
I fiddle with stuff. I can hold this pin between like my index finger and thumb and my fingers very loose. I'm holding the pin. Or I can squeeze the pin right here with all my might. Like, look at these forearm muscles. They're bulging out. Squeeze this pin. Now, my hands are going to burn out squeezing the pin like that. Whereas I can hold this forever. And a lot of times with your grips, you can do that. You can hang on loosely. And then when you need it to be tight and have that death grip, you can use the death grip. But as far as with the with holding, you can hold loosely and then, kind of go from there. Like when you need the death grip, then you go death grip for a little bit. But you use the death grip at the time when you have to have the grip. And I'll even release the grip. So like, for instance, someone gets ready to break my grip off, unless I absolutely need it right now and I'm in the middle of doing a technique, I let it go to save my fingers so they don't get jacked up more than they already are.
Yes.
And also because there's no reason, that's not the battle that I'm going to fight for, right? It's like, there's certain battles in jiu-jitsu that you really got to like stake your claim. And that's where you got to like really fight for those inches. Like when you're doing like a guard pass and like you're grabbing head control and you're really trying to hang on to the guard and not let them bring the knees, and that you got to fight that battle. But like one grip, like just the beginning, you may not need that grip. Let them go. You can always get it again, but you'll see guys waste their grip energy just hanging on to a grip that they don't even necessarily need.
Right.
I had one time I had a young guy, I was asking him, I was like trying to fight and he was just hanging on death grip. I said, hey, I was like, what technique are you thinking about going for? And he looked at me and said, I don't know. I was like, well, then why are you holding this grip so tight? I was like, there's no reason to. He's like, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and just like you said, you're saving your hands. I mean, everybody makes fun of me for taping my hands a bunch, but it's because I've destroyed a couple of my fingers already, and I know better. And that's from letting go of grips. It's going to happen regardless, So if you don't let go of grips, you're really just fire your hands up. But
yeah,
and another thing, maybe people are wondering about. I'll ask you this: do you do any specific grip strengthening or grip training? Now, there's a piece where you can think about where you're trying to stop the effects of overuse, which is something. But do you do anything specifically for strengthening your grips?
So I'll do a couple things. One is I've posted about this in one of my videos where I was showing what's in my gym bag on the YouTube channel. I keep a little extender, little band.
Yeah, a little band.
Keep my car. Because when I'm done training, when I'm driving home, I do those and I do holds, open my hand up and flex up. Since I'm rolling my wrist down in doing this, I try to open my hand up and flex it up.
Yep.
I essentially just try to do the opposite of what I was just doing. And that makes my hands feel so much better because what was happening is I noticed that my hands, man, I like sometimes at night, it would be like my hands would just be curled up into little balls and it'd be really tight and sometimes painful. Whereas as long as I do that, it's okay. If I start having certain bits of like tennis elbow and stuff like that, I can do these turns and these kinds of things and that gets rid of that, no problem. If I'm over gripping, typically I'm not though. And then from there, as far as gripping is concerned, it's interesting. I remember when I was younger, I was like really like full bore into gripping, right? Like grip strength and everything else. I find that I get plenty of grip strength from things like deadlifts, RDLs, lifting weights in general. If you really want to get doing it, you can do some like fat bar type stuff. Like you can get fat bars or you can even get fat bar attachments and put them on things. So you have to like hold the weight with like a fatter grip.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of it actually comes through jiu-jitsu training. So again, because, you know, you think about this, like you can get so much out of training if you're deliberate. The problem is most people aren't very deliberate. They're not deliberate about anything, right? Like I can go up to most people like, what did you eat today? Oh, I don't know this. Like, did you weigh it out? Do you know how many calories you had? Do you know how many like carbohydrates you had before training? Like, no, you're just like kind of going about it. Like you can be completely undeliberate about everything. I don't know if that's a word, but and just let everything have happenstance, you know, but it's like, or you can say, like, you can start tightening everything up. Right. You know, because that's where you get a lot of stuff from. Like, I mean, it sounds crazy. I mean, but like, I try, like my life has I have tons of freedom too, but I try to, there's some things that I'm very regimented about, right? From my work schedule in some cases, not always, but in some cases with some of the things I do, like there's certain things that have to get done every single day. Then with my eating habits, like that's all weighed out. Everything's weighed, measured. So I know what I'm getting down to like the coffee I take in. Like for instance, caffeine is a stimulant, it's a drug. If I'm going to take it, I need to know exactly what I'm getting in it. I'm not going to like wing it. Like, well, I got this much today. And I need to know what I'm getting because if I find like a place that works, I'm like, let's keep that going. Right. And even like my pre-training meals and post-training meals, like what works, what seems to help me out. Okay. Stretching, like which stretches seem to help the most. I need to do those regularly. But training, going back to it, being deliberate. So you can walk into your gym and you can just flow through everything. I've had a great training session. I feel good. And that's that. And there's perfectly a time for that. Or you can go in and say, all right, I'm going to grip the hell out of this dude or lady, right? You're going to grip them. You're going to fight them for those grips tooth and nail. And you'll get really strong with your grips from doing that. Now there's tons of other stuff you can do, like using your gi. Like you can get like, if you've got like an old ratty gi that's like you're getting ready to throw away, use it for pull-ups and pulls. You can use it as attachments, things like that. Those are fine. To me, those belong at the end of the exercise though. Because like I've seen people that like go crazy on the grip training. Yeah. If you destroy your grips at the beginning of your workout, you're done for the rest of the workout. You're not going to be able to do anything. So at the end of your workout, should you have some grip strength left, if you want to knock out some different grip strength stuff like pull-ups on a gi or holds, I love farmer's carries. Farmer carries are great. They're great exercises. Just walking around with those. Not only is it good for sort of for a cardiovascular exercise, should you do it for like a long period of time, but man, you want to talk about burning your hands up and getting the same kind of forearm burn that you would have if you're like, I mean, you get the burn in your forearm where your hands are just like same thing I get through in jiu-jitsu a lot of times. So I love that exercise. But I think that really comes down to one, making sure you're off balancing some of the effects, and then being very and you can do some stuff to strengthen up in the gym. Although if you're doing your gym training right, you're doing compound exercise, you're going to strengthen them up by and large that way. You could add a little bit of supplementation should you need it. And then from there, with the training inside the gym, you should be focused on being aggressive with your grips. You know, the more you do that, the stronger you're going to get from those positions that are specifically from jiu-jitsu, you know. So I don't get too crazy on the grips as much as I used to. I thought I used to have to train grip strength a lot more. Yeah. I don't train it as much anymore. But then again, my grip strength's good. It got better. Now my grip strength used to be super weak. I remember when I was younger, I used to like deadlift. My buddy Chris and we would go to the gym, and I remember deadlifting with him, and I couldn't hold 315 with without straps.
Mm.
You know, and that's not very much. That's not very much weight for a guy weighing about 200 pounds. That's not very much weight to not be able to hold with your hands. So I'd use straps. I had such baby hands. And then I got my grip strength stronger from doing holds, farmers carries, things of that nature. Then, you know, now like deadlifting wise, not that it's important, but to kind of contrast, I've done like a 450 deadlift without straps, just with a double overhand grip. I don't use an over under. I don't like the idea of it. Like one hand goes this way and the other hand goes that way, because you see people tear their biceps and they almost always tear the bicep on the underhand grip. You'll see them go, and this hand's a little bit listen, it's good position, but that hand that's like this, you see them jerk.
More emphasis on the bicep that way,
and you see it roll up. So I don't deadlift that way. Plus, I didn't want my lats to begin to like form differently. So I do a double overhand grip. When my grip fails, straps. So my grip strength got better, so I don't really need it as much. But I think those are some ideas for you if you want that. And then again, be deliberate with your training to improve your grip strength if it's weak by trying to be aggressive and strong with your grips.
I do agree with pretty much everything you said. You know, I think that if you're training a lot, you have to be mindful. Like if you're training jiu-jitsu a lot, you have to be mindful of also not supplementing too much into like specific grip strengthening. But what you can do, like you said, you get these supplementary, these exercises that actually give you a 2-for-1 benefit, right? Yeah. You're doing a deadlift or you're doing farmer's carries. You're getting benefits in other capacities there, but you're also getting the grip benefit as well. So like a lot of times it's maybe a better use of your time to do movements like that or exercise like that. And then for me, you know, being a physical therapist, I'm always like on the rehab side of things. I'm always like, you know, like you said, work the opposing muscles, stretch maybe the you know, after training, do some light stretching to the forearm muscle. That's going to be really helpful. So if you're, you know, if you've been gripping, maybe you're doing those clock stretches. I really like those. Yeah. Because it opens up your hand.
Oh yeah.
And
like where you turn them around like this.
Yeah. And you're like on hands and hands and knees. Those are really great. It's a dynamic one as well. That one I really like. And then if you have like a tendonitis or like a tennis elbow, like there's a thing you can get called a TheraBar, and they have like different resistance. It's like this rubber like bar, and you can do some of these eccentric. So like negatives, essentially. You can do a lot of negatives in different ways, and also the rotations, things like that. So if you're dealing with some strength or some gripping issues, some negatives are very helpful. So that gives you a good strengthening component and a lengthening component. So that's kind of a go-to anytime you're having some overuse issues. Yeah,
it's funny. Like I created like a little course for grip strength. And I remember, you know, some people don't like it because it's not about necessarily getting the death grips only. Like I show some ways to strengthen the grip, but a lot of it is like stretches and like stretches and banded work where we can do rotations in different directions, stuff like that. Cause it's like I'm a longevity guy, right? I'm thinking about how can I train and be effective for a long time? I don't want to be broken. I don't want to do jiu-jitsu and say, yeah, man, I held onto that guy's grip and he could never break it. But then I can't go home and open a jar of pickles for my girlfriend because my hands are sore. You laugh. That happened to me one time. I remember I felt so embarrassed. I felt so emasculated. I went home one night and like my hands were all jacked up. I had super bad tendonitis in my right arm, you know, and my girlfriend, who's like 4'11", she's tiny. She's like, hey, can you open the jar of pickles? So I go there, I try to open the jar of pickles, and my arm was hurting from the rotation. And I was like, no, I can't. You know, that doesn't feel good as a man. Luckily I could get it with my left hand going, but my dominant hand, I couldn't open the jar of pickles, Eugene.
Oh, Nick,
can you open your pickles, Nick? I couldn't open the pickles. It was a terrible moment.
I wish there was a video evidence of that because I would laugh at you.
As you should. But luckily doing all the rotations and stuff. And then it's like all the pickles, no problem.
Well, you know, at the beginning of the podcast, you were talking about, you know, you're getting older. I can't, you know, I don't have as many of these tough rounds back to back in me. Right. That's smart. That's smart. You know, we're all kind of getting older. We're all starting to, I guess, come to face our mortality in some way, you know, what we're capable of. We know we're not invincible. When you think you're 18, 20, you can jump off whatever and
you can you can break your body down and you recover the next day. As you get to your late 30s, it changes. You know, I still have the ability to turn on the burners and go, but the recovery time's different.
The cost
is different. And even just if I get an injury, doesn't really go away. Like they go away a little bit, but they kind of nag afterwards for a
Takes
long
longer to get
time.
rid of it.
Where I was a young kid, you could get away with it. And so, I think it's one of those things where I thought about that. Like, a lot of people get into like, they talk about like people having their midlife crisis. I'm like, I'm getting into midlife, but I'm
You
not.
think?
Yeah, of course. Like, I'm 36. Like, so 70, 72 somewhere.
It's not midlife. That's maybe quarter life crisis.
Depends on who
36. Okay, maybe.
Depends on how long I live. I mean, like 72, 75. I mean, like
not quarter life, third life. Third life.
That's crisis. There's no way I'm going to be 100 plus.
Yeah.
It's not happening. There's no way.
You never know.
No, I know. My body's not built to live to 100. Just not. It's just not the way.
But here's the thing. You say that. However, you're maybe looking at your family history or what have you. I don't know what your
family history. Yeah. Yep.
But did your family or that of, did they did they get the amount of exercise?
Did they get punched in the head for a number of years?
Yeah, but that's more like you might be alive, but be a vegetable.
I don't want to do that. If that happens, it's like, let's take the Chewjitsu back behind the bar and we'll get done with it.
It's going to keep working. You might still be surviving. No, but like, I think you do a lot of things that can maybe, and there's, obviously new research and new science that can kind of make up some ground on that.
Potentially. But for all intents and purposes, I'm getting into half-life, right? I'm getting into midlife.
So weird to think about.
Isn't it? Now, here's the thing. I'm in touch with my body because I've been training so much. Like, it's not a crisis. Yeah. It's like I'm seeing it happening. I'm like, this is what's happening. It's cool. There's other avenues for me to express myself and do things. And I still got plenty of life left in me. I think I've got another good 10 years of being, it's going to
Jiu-Jitsu.
It's going to decline down. I mean, by the time I'm 50, it's not just an age thing, because some people are like, Chewy, you're really young, blah, blah. It's a mileage thing. I've been doing this for 20. I've been doing this for 20 years. Right. So I've been training I've been doing wrestling and training since I was 15 years old. I've been lifting since I was 14. Right. I've just got a lot of mileage on the body. It is what it is. But I'm okay with that. So again, like when I say this, I'm not trying to be morbid or anything like that. Like you need to take me out behind the barn when I'm, 38 and be done with it. I'm just saying that, you have to be smart with what you got. You get one bag of bones to take on this ride. You don't want to be careless with it, and in your younger days, when you're in your 20s and stuff like that, you can be kind of careless with it. You can treat it like crap and it just seems to bounce back as you get older. You've got to fine tune everything. You've got to be deliberate about everything from sleep to diet, whatever. If you want to keep doing this with an energy and everything else, if you want to be able to keep up with the young bucks, and at least sometimes, you're going to have to eat right. You're going to have to do as much as you can to sleep right. I know that's a hard one for a lot of people. You're going to have to do all kinds of different things in order to sort of do that. And so, as I get older, like, again, going back to it, I like competing is fun and I enjoy competing and I enjoy winning, but it's not more important for me to smash everybody on the mat and then leave and then having my hands unable to open pickle jars and be able to function as a human being. That's not as important. I like training and I can train at different levels of training, and I would rather have more training than harder training and less training. Yeah. I'd rather train more often and enjoy it rather than beat the crap out of myself and be miserable, but be like, yeah, smashed everybody today. Like, that's an ego problem. So, yeah.
And you think about, it's about building a balance there. Like, you do too much, it can break you down. You do too little, it'll break you down. You know what I mean? You got people, a simple example is like they did MRIs of people's low backs, right? And they looked at, these power lifters, and they look at people that are sedentary and sit all day, and their backs, I mean, have some of the same issues. Whether one has problems versus the other person, it's very different. A lot of times your body can overcome some of these bulging discs or whatever. It's not really that big of a deal if you've got that. You can function, and if your body's used to functioning, used to movement, it kind of knows how to get back to it. So
we'll rust out or wear out.
Yeah.
And when we talked to Dr. McGill on the podcast, the back
Stu
doctor,
McGill,
Stu McGill, he was talking about this guy whose back was all kinds of jacked up, and he started working on stabilizing his core, making it stronger, and all of a sudden this dude goes and squats 1,000 pounds. So again, there's always that convinced, like you said, bulging disc, like, oh, you need to hang all this stuff up, or there's ways that you can deal with it, but you got to be deliberate about it. And that goes back to, you got to be focused on what you're doing. Like, for instance, with you'll give me exercises to do, and then they work like magic because I go do them.
Mhm.
You know, like for instance, during the quarantine, you gave me my shoulders all jacked up, and you know, it was messed up and it was bothering me. You gave me some exercise. I remember the banded ones where I'm going up and down the wall,
good stuff,
and doing some stuff. I did them like every friggin' day. I'd get up every day and do my exercises, sometimes twice a day. And guess what? Shoulder got better. You know, I think it got better than what it was beforehand because then I started loosening up. So, but again, it's deliberate about it. You can't just go about it and be like, I'll get around to it sometime.
And I have a theory about your shoulder, by the way.
What's that?
That situation.
Yeah, what is it?
You weren't getting enough movement. It was less movement. It was during Corona.
Well, what happened is it got hurt a little bit during training, and then we stopped training.
Yeah.
And then it got
well, usually what happens is you're getting it moving, you're getting that range of motion, the blood flow, circulation, all that fun stuff. And you kind of get back to it, you kind of bounce back a little faster versus you're not getting that stimulation in your body. And I just want to mention something. Not everyone is going to present the same way with a bulging disc. Okay. So some people will require surgical intervention. Some people will not. It's dependent on the individual and the severity and things like that. So I'm not like, oh, bulging disc, you're being a baby, suck it up kind of thing. It's like, dude, everybody's different. Everyone's unique. And some people have really bad rotator cuff tears in their shoulder and they can still function and they can still compete and do high level things. And some people can't lift their arm. Right. You don't know why.
Everybody's different.
Everybody's very, very different. And, you know, building that balance. And also we talked about things being quote unquote sexy, right? A lot of the rehab stuff, the sleeping, the diet, the measuring your food, it's tedious. It seems like it's just a waste, but really it is, if you change your mindset about it, it's a supplement to your jiu-jitsu. It's just basically an addition to your, it's going to make your jiu-jitsu better and going to make, you know, even if you take a little time off, you will maybe build some, if you're injured, right? You take the appropriate time off, you're going to build longevity. Like you said, I don't want to go really, really hard for 5 years and then be done. I want to be able to get 15 solid years of good. I'm just using as an example, but getting more out of your body. You know, you're not running it down to the ground. You're not like forcing it to break down so badly you have to build it back up. It's kind of, you break it down a little and you build it back up, and it's a lot easier to do that versus completely being, you know, down the dumps.
Well, here's an example of that at play. So on Monday we rolled hard. We did wrestling, drilling, and rolled, and it's hot as can be in the gym. It was real hot. It was getting like in the 80s.
Did you turn the fan on or
no? It just, one of the AC units was down. So, you know, and again, it's in the 80s and it's humid. So, you know, the thing is, if you understand how sweat works, when things get really humid, the way sweat cools you down is when the moisture, when your body secretes the moisture and you got those little, you know, droplets on your skin, it then, when they evaporate, it pulls heat with it. Right. This is why when you go to a place like a dry climate, like Arizona, you don't see the sweat, but you stay, it's really hot, but you stay relatively cool. As long as it's not like 115 degrees or something, you know, when it's like reasonable temperatures, you'll be dry, but it still doesn't feel as bad. Like I've gone to Las Vegas with you before. Yeah. And it's like 100 degrees, but the 100 degrees there doesn't hold a candle to like a 90-degree day here, where you walk outside and it's so thick. You're sweating. You feel like you can just smell the air. Well, here's the problem. Because there's so much moisture in the air, the droplets don't evaporate as fast. And so because they don't evaporate, your body doesn't cool down. The mechanism that it uses to cool down is no longer there. So then it typically relies on more of a blood adaptation, to where it tries to move blood around. That's why people get really red. You probably know all this stuff.
Some of it, yeah.
But people,
I don't know the science of sweating too much.
People listening though. But so with that said, it's like 80 degrees in there, and like it's humid. So everybody's just sweaty. The mats were just puddles everywhere. So one hard day. Well, then Tuesday came in, another hard day. Wednesday, bro, I was wiped out, and I wanted to lift and do stuff, but I was like, I could just feel, I felt my body was off. Like I didn't have it. You know, I was like, I felt tired, you know? So I was like, I'm just going to rest. And then got a massage, whatever. Next morning, I did a little bit of light bike work. Yeah. I try to, like, before I do any sort of like actual like work in the office work, I do a little bit of biking first, because if I don't move first, I'm worthless. Yeah. Then I did like work all day long, and then I came into the gym on Thursday night, taught class, rolled a little bit. I didn't get too hard after it. And then this morning I felt great. I lifted and rolled this morning by taking it easy for a couple days after those hard sessions, and then I had a great rolling session. Yeah. You had a great rolling session and a great squat lift. I did deadlifts, or not. I did legs today, and it felt great. So sometimes like when you get that way, you don't necessarily always have to like just drive through it. You can back off the pedal a little bit and then regain yourself and then come back harder, a day or two later.
Yeah. Versus being broken down for, 2-3 days in a row. You take one day, kind of relax a little bit, and then you can compete at the higher or train at the higher level.
Yep.
So, all right, let's get some questions.
Yeah.
I think it's a good stopping point. Let's get some questions, guys. Send us some of your questions.
I love how that we got on grips and somehow got onto midlife crises and everything else.
It is our MO is what we do.
Man, this is, I want to say that I think we held it together really well, guys. That was the first time we've ever had a troller come in and post stupid stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's just people are insecure and they're gonna,
I think it's just people that just like, I think it's insecurity / it's like, imagine being like a person who has no control in their life.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, you think about like some of the nature of sometimes kids, why they make fun of other kids. Sometimes it's a sort of a, what do I have control over in my surroundings? Because sometimes kids don't even know why they do it, but they'll like make fun of someone.
Yeah.
And you're like, why did you make fun of them? They don't even know.
They don't.
But they sometimes realize that they're testing their boundaries. Like if I make fun of him, they make funny faces or whatever. I have control. Right. And so I think a lot of times it's with people that are, obviously they could just be insecure, whatever.
Right.
But I think also it's people that are just doing things who have no control or anything going on in their life. So that's like, it's their way to get their jollies out.
They're unhappy. I don't know. Aladdin 18 asked a quick question. Any idea when you'll bring back the Chewy gi? Really wanted one. So maybe the Origin one, is that correct?
The Origin one, they just started shipping out this week. So those of you guys that ordered one, you'll be getting your shipping tracking numbers and stuff. As far as when I'm going to bring one back, I don't know. I do pre-orders. If you guys are on my email list, then you always get first crack. Like for instance, the people that camp sold out yesterday, was just to the email list. The Chew Crew email list sort of gets first crack at everything. You can get that on my website, but yeah, I don't know when I'm going to bring them back. I periodically do it, maybe sometime at the end of the year. I'm not sure. So just kind of keep your eyes out for them, and maybe stash a couple greenbacks away for the time if you're in the United States. If you're not, whatever kind of money you guys use.
Crypto. Chewy's taking crypto now.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Trevor. It's a good one. I got a BJJ problem. I did my first 3 months, but got injured. Had to take a month off. Now it's real hard to get back into it, and it's been a few months. Got any advice? Common question we get.
Yeah. So, by the way, I got injured early on in jiu-jitsu. I got injured pretty early. I was rolling with my buddy Rob, who is one of my black belts now. But he and I were rolling, and I tweaked my knee, and I would come into the gym continuously anyway because I didn't want to lose my schedule, and I kept in training. Here's the thing. You can maybe I'll use it on like sort of a minor level, and then we'll kind of expand out a little bit. This morning I got up and this morning I didn't really want to go lift this morning. I'll be honest with you. I was feeling kind of lazy. I was sitting downstairs, and we, Jess and I were at our house, and our house is so comfy. Like it's just nice. Like got our big yard. It's like a big giant park essentially. I was like, man, I just want to sit here and read for a little bit and be lazy, But I was like, thinking about it in my head, what do I want to happen? I want this to happen, so I'm gonna go lift. Now, as soon as I lifted, I loved it. I was glad I went, and I knew I would be glad I went. And then I trained jiu-jitsu, and I was glad I did that. And I had a friggin' awesome day so far. When I'm doing something, a lot of times I'm not really that worried about where I am or what's going on right now. I'm thinking about like, what is it that I want to happen? Okay, what do I have to do to make that happen? Okay, and then a lot of times, especially with training, very rarely have I ever had a situation where I wasn't happy that I went to the gym. Very rarely. I can't think of one. I'm sure it's probably happened at some point. I probably had a bad day at the gym and like, maybe didn't want to go, but pretty much any day that I can think of, I've always had a good experience. Even my rough days, I was still glad I went. Even the days where I was coming back from injuries and I was exhausted and I was out of shape, I was glad I went. I was happy to be back. And so I think that you probably need to think about that. First off, I imagine you want to get better at this stuff, right? You want to get your belts and you want to win matches, or you want to get experience and become a coach or something. You have some reason why you're training. I always tell people that you have a reason why you're here. I don't know what that reason is. Everybody's reasons are different. Think about that reason. That's only going to happen if you go into the gym and train. That's the only way that happens. Also, think about the feeling of after training. Don't worry about the feeling of before training. Like, for instance, like if you're having like a sluggish day, don't think about being sluggish. Think about every time you get done training, you get that nice endorphin rush. You're sitting back on the mats and you're happy you went, and you're able to train with your buddies and hang out. That's a good feeling. That after training feeling is amazing. Think about that feeling. That's a fun feeling to achieve. And so you can fixate on that stuff. Don't fixate on, I'm going to be out of shape. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be this, that, whatever. Think about, if I want to be a black belt someday, if I want to win competitions, if I want to be able to be in better shape, or whatever it is that you're going for, that only happens if you train. And where will you be if you don't train? Okay. So if you don't go back, then you're never going to make those things happen. If you go back, it's going to suck a little bit, sure, but you're still going to have a good time, right? But down the road, it's going to be better. And so I fixate on all those good things. So I tend to do this. Here's my 2-step process. I always have a negative vision. I remember back in the day, like all the self-help gurus, they always want to say, like, be positive. It doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. I have a positive vision of what I want. So I think about the good stuff I want, but then I also have a negative thing. What is it that I don't want to happen? Yeah. Right? What is the negative side of this? So for you, what's the positive? What do you want to happen? All right, go towards that. What's the negative? I don't want to be X, this, that, whatever. Well, then get away from it. I always have something I'm running towards and something I'm running from. And that's the way I would do it. So I would just get back in the gym, forget about being tired. You're going to be tired. So what? The injuries are going to happen, but it's what you want to do deep down. That's why you're asking the question. So just do it and have a reason as to why you're doing it. Have a reason, both positive and negative, why you're doing this thing, and get back in there.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's sometimes the most difficult part is getting there. Once you're there, you can kind of, then the ball starts rolling. We've had guys, for jiu-jitsu example, scared to come in. They sat outside for days and days. They pull up, couldn't go inside, right? And eventually, they did. They've been training ever since. They love it. It's filled that thing they've been looking for. It's been a very valuable part of their life. So
yeah, you have a choice. You have a choice with what you want to do. Think about this. If you don't go back and train, are you going to be upset with yourself? Are you going to be happy with that decision? Mm-hmm. Probably not. So get back in there and take the choice and get in there and train. It's what you want to do. Again, if you don't want to train, I have no sweat off my back, but you asked this question, so I imagine you want to train. So get back in there and train.
Here's a quick one, Chew. And we can both maybe answer it real quick. I'll just summarize from Jonah. He's got a gym that's very close to him, but he'd only be getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep because of the schedule, versus a gym that's about 30 minutes away. He'd get better recovery. He'd be able to sleep for longer. Is there one gym that you recommend that he goes to?
2 gyms. One is 5 minutes away, and I'd be getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep.
Just based on basically the schedule is very much not conducive to his work schedule.
Here's the thing. Here's what I'd say. One is 30 minutes isn't that big of a deal. Very rarely have I ever lived. It's rare I've ever lived that close to my gym. If you have no previous relationship with the gym, go check it out. And if you like what the 30-minute away gym has to offer and that allows you more sleep, I would take that one. Because 4 or 5 hours of sleep is not a lot. Now, again, people will run on that for a while, but it's not optimal. Mm-hmm. Not for your health, not for long-term brain function, not anything. Occasionally a 4 or 5 hour a night, if you have to do it, sure, whatever. But like long-term, it's not good. You need to sleep. And so you're going to be better off probably going for that later gym. Now, that said, if you really, 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 really like the gym that's 5 minutes away, then you do it. I don't know what your relationship with them is. And if you have a decent relationship with those people, this has happened several times with my guys. They've come up to me and said, "Hey, Chewy, can we start a class at X time?" Sure. If that's what works for you guys, we've got classes that people started not because I was like, this time works for me, but because they have to get up really early or they have to get up late or whatever. And they just started at a new time. So a couple of ideas.
Yeah. I think definitely the relationship or the quality of training that you have. If one has a significantly, maybe you can go between 2 gyms, but I think that the quality of training is a big factor as well. And talking to the coach or talking to, the guys that run the gym, like, hey, could we make some modifications or any opportunity there? Mm-hmm. I'd be willing to work with you, Yep. So I think it's a good one. This is a question we could maybe, Mighty Smurf, and they ask, "Hey, Chewy, why are so many young kids throwing leg locks in competition?"
I don't know, because they're cool.
I think it's because they
emulate.
They started. What did you see when you started training? What did you see?
Yeah, monkey see, monkey do.
You
like
see Gordon Ryan.
Yeah, they see Gordon
locks.
Ryan. They see Gordon Ryan, Gary Tonin, Dean Lister. You know, all these guys using leg locks. So what are they going to do? They're going to mimic. That's what kids do. I mean, think about like, I mean, I remember putting me and my buddies would wrestle around and, you know, jump off the couch like pro wrestling style on each other and put each other in sharpshooters and figure 4 leg locks and stuff like that back in the day. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just mimicking. So kids are definitely going to look at that. They're going to say, you know what? Look at all the best guys. We're going to mimic them. We're going to do what they're doing because they're cool and we want to be cool. So we're going to do what they're doing. So, you know, and the other day I watched a kid do a leg lock and he's a teenager and I know he hasn't really learned them from the class that he's in because he's doing one of the basic classes, but he probably watched a video. So that is what it is.
Yeah. This is from,
but that said, I don't necessarily care. I don't think kids should be using like twisting stuff. You know, or, you know, whatever, but like a straight ankle or something like that, it's not that bad. And especially if the kids are unaware of it, you know, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I just think it's one of those things where you have to know it. And a lot of times in competitions, the ref has the discretion to stop the match, which I think is good.
For younger kids.
Kids. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing because, you know, let's say the kid's out there and he's getting, you know, something like getting caught in something and he's going to let his joint pop. That's not good for growing bodies, right? That's bad. And you don't know what's going on at home because I no kidding. Here's a terrible story. And, you know, if I was who I am now, I'd totally like get up in this guy's face and, you know, tell him to stop being a jerk. But, you know, at the time I was a young blue belt, so not my place. So I was at a tournament and this young kid is getting ready to go out and compete. And his dad, who, you know, you could tell from the look of his body, wasn't really into training that much. You know, looked like he, you know, wasn't really into being in shape. He looks at his son and he's like, all right, Rev, remember, whatever you do, don't tap. And he like pats the kid on the back. Kid goes out to compete. The kid gets caught in arm bar. And like, I mean, the kid, he's like, he's got the arm the kid that got, you know, told not to tap, he's getting caught in an arm bar and he's like trying to hold out and he's like squealing. So the ref stops it. And, you know, the dad comes off and he gives that kid a look of disgust, you know, like, and I remember like looking at that dude, I was like, I just wanted to double leg him through a wall. I was like, God, you're terrible. Like, you're an awful human. Like, what are you doing?
He's got no idea.
Of course he doesn't. And another one was, I remember when I was a teacher, a coach, I remember there was this young kid and I remember he was always such a fun kid to have around. And then one day he comes in, he's rolling. And he has this aggression to him and he's like fighting out of a submission that he normally would tap from. It wasn't a big deal. And he's fighting out of it and he's making this gritty face and he gets caught in a submission. He's not tapping. So I break it up. I stop. I'm like, hey, what's going on, buddy? Why aren't you, what are you doing? And he's like holding his arm, you know, and he's like, Chewy, you know, my grandpa said that and he's like trying not to cry. Right. So he's like, my grandpa said that if I don't do good at jiu-jitsu, I don't get to play Xbox. I immediately looked over at grandpa, like, come here. Like, let's talk for a second. You know, I was like, dude, you know, there's good and bad. And this is what I was getting back to, the wrong and the right way, good and bad. Like we equate things a lot of times as like, well, if you failed and it was bad, but a lot of times failure is what you learn from. 100%. It's like most of the best stuff in my life that I've ever had came off the back of a failure, lots of them. So it's like, no, that we're learning the wrong message here. You know, when we do that, we're perverting this thing and turning it into something that it shouldn't be. Yeah. You know, and it sucks too, because that kid he went from being this kid that's having fun, trying stuff out and going for stuff and just having a blast to didn't really want to train a lot because there was so much pressure. Yeah. And so with kids, they can stop the match. So if they do if they were to do like a straight ankle lock or something like that, the ref could stop it if it gets to a certain point and stop them from harming themselves or something like that.
Earlier on the show, I think Breck thought we were maybe talking about you had competed against him, still rolling. And you guys, I remember it was like in Nashville, possibly, or
Nashville, yeah.
And you guys like had quite a while on the feet, quite a while establishing grips.
Well, yeah, Breck. So I didn't realize. So I saw Breck compete several times, and I always thought he was like a really good guard player. Yes. And then we were competing, and like our first match, like he did a really good job, like stuffing several of my takedowns. And I remember I was like, afterwards, I was like, well, I wasn't expecting this. I remember talking to him afterwards. He's like, yeah, man, I wrestled him. I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. But there was one grip I remember, like, There was one grip that I was fighting out of that was like a tough grip. I watched him, and he's done it at other competitions at that Bravo. He's got a good Bravo grip, like good Bravo grip and big strong hands, you know. So he's grabbing onto it. I remember like fighting that sucker. You know what I mean? But that's the battle though with those kinds of guys. Because again, if you give them that, they're gonna run with it. You know. But yeah, Breck was a tough competitor.
Yeah. This is a problem we've kind of had. Some people have dealt with this as well, just getting stacked, and this may be Chewy, maybe advice if you're getting stacked, so getting stacked, maybe going for a triangle and somebody really loading up on you, bigger person. You got any advice for that, just to keep it safe? Maybe.
Let's see. If you keep getting stacked and go for
sorry, this is the wrong one. Okay. The question was somebody was saying that they hurt their back getting stacked.
Yeah. So a lot of times, like, I don't like to get stacked, like that. So going back to longevity, there's certain positions where I'm like, okay, I don't want to play from this positions. I don't want to fight from this position much because the long-term effects of it aren't good. For instance, like, I don't really invert much. And the reason why is because I have plenty of friends that invert and that's their game, and they all have neck issues. Like, imagine that, like, you're laying on your neck all the time and someone's dropping their weight. Eventually it's going to have neck issues. So I don't want to do that. So I'd stay away from the inverting. I'll do it a little bit, but not very much. With getting stacked, a lot of times what I'll do is if they start to stack me up, let's say for like a double underpass, I'll purposely begin to push my body so that, away from them to where either where I can get to a turtle position. Like, you can kick off the leg and try to go to turtle, or sometimes I'll like purposely try to get my legs and push them away so they can begin to pass, so that I can fight for underhook escapes and things like that after they get going for the pass.
Right.
But I try to fight. I basically I try to go one way or the other, but give space on those stacks because I don't want to sit there and just eat the stack.
Sure.
Because it's just not a good position. And if it's a triangle situation, then you need to get off to an angle. So again, if you got a triangle and you're getting stacked, you need to begin to cut angles on the person. You can hook under their legs and do a number of different things, but you can't stay straight up on them because if you're straight, they're going to stack. If you cut the angle, they can't stack you as easily. And so, again, what I would say is if they've got you in a stacked pass of some sort, try to push off your legs and either give up the pass and then so you can fight for underhook escapes and everything else, or you can try to kick off and try to go for a turtle position. A lot of smaller guys will go for turtle a lot because, again, turtle, technically you're giving up the back, right? You're exposing your back, which is not a good thing. But the benefit of it is if you're smaller, if they get to side control, you might not get out. Like, imagine if you're in side control on the bottom and you're a small guy or girl, it's going to not be a fun position for you. Yep. So you can go to turtle, stronger position, got more power in your hips, and you can keep rolling. This is why if you watch a lot of smaller grapplers, they're really good at using turtle as a regard position and doing Granby rolls and things like that from it, because you're basically getting away from that side control position. So the percentage of you getting to turtle and getting back to guard is better than you escaping from side control when you have some freaking big monster on top of you.
Right. And having some anticipation when you're in that position, like, okay, I'm starting to be in a bad position.
Yep.
I got to move. Not waiting until it's too late. Like you said, the Granby roll, rolling through even. Chad would do inverted stuff all the time, and he would roll through and regard really well. Really,
was really good at that.
Really good at that.
That's where like the that rolling back take stuff came from. Because when I was rolling with Chad back in the day, his regarding was so good from turtle that I had to figure out a different way to go to the back.
Yeah. Here's a question, Chew.
By the way, I like that Timothy Ortel used the Pyrrhic Victory. So Pyrrhic Victory, that's a fun term. Cool. So like the history behind the Pyrrhic Victory. So do you know what a Pyrrhic Victory is? A Pyrrhic Victory is, let's say that like you win the battle, whatever kind of battle, proverbial battle, real battle, but then you're too weak to win the war. Right. So what happened was King Pyrrhus was hired to fight the Romans, and he was whooping their butts. But every time he fought the Romans, he would lose soldiers, and he kept losing soldiers. And eventually the Romans kept refilling their ranks, and eventually they beat him because he basically won several campaigns, but he just couldn't really secure the long term. He won several battles, but he couldn't secure the campaign because he was too weak to finish. So you don't want to like say, and he was I remember when he posted that because my eyes popped up. He was talking about when I was talking about you don't want to fight tooth and nail for something that's not even important. You don't want to fight for like a position that's really not going to get you anywhere. Gotcha. So that would be considered a Pyrrhic Victory. So fun little factoid for you. Historical. Yeah.
Orange tea. Is it possible to avoid spinal neck injury from jiu-jitsu long term?
Knock on wood, man. I've not had any really crazy neck or spinal issues, but again, spinal broke my back. That's like the best. It's best like sound bite. Sometimes I'll be in the gym and there's a few guys that I know that know it. I'll just say it. I broke my back.
Yeah.
Spinal. As far as your back goes, man, your neck. I'm sure at some point, everybody's going to have some low back issues and something because your body's just a finite machine, right? It's going to break down on you. But I think that you really need to be careful about the positions you choose to really put your focus into. So like, again, I was talking about inverting and rolling up on your neck and stuff. If you're trying to stay away from spinal neck issues, not going to be the best position, right? Think about what you're doing. You're rolling your back up, you're rolling your neck up, and then you've got someone sitting on top of it. It's just a bad idea if you're worried about spinal. I just can't get it out of my head now. Spinal and neck issues. It's just not a good idea. You have to be mindful of that. Mm-hmm. So there's certain positions that are just not very conducive to health in your spine. That said, also, I think it's really important to strengthen the muscles in your body. One of the things I think that a lot of jiu-jitsu guys suffer from is because they don't strength train. Now, again, strength training I'm not saying you've got to be a big bodybuilder or anything like that, but like Eugene, you talk about this. Strength training can be, it doesn't have to be, but if you're lifting right, it can be one of the best things for preventing injury.
Top 3 easy.
Easy. It's one of these things where, and you can think of it as maintenance, because as you strengthen the muscles and the joints themselves, that's going to help basically be like armor for the damage that you're taking when you're training. And so I think that if you, again, are mindful of the positions that you're in, and I think that if you also lift intelligently, that doesn't mean go into the gym, put crazy weight on the deadlift bar, and then do the sort of like rounded back, cat back to pick the deadlift up, right? It means you're really mindful of your form, strengthening up your core, your back, and everything else. I think that you can ward off the injuries for a time. You'll still have stuff because you can't prevent everything from happening, but I think that it'll help increase your odds of maintaining good, strong back health for long term. And again, if any of you guys are, if you haven't checked it out before, if you have some issues with your back, check out Dr. Stu McGill. We had him on the podcast, and he's got several resources available for back health. And again, he's got his big 3 that he talks about, which is 3 exercises, very simple and very helpful. And so you can check those out, and they're very helpful resources. But I can tell you one thing. Here's one thing for you. My low back, I had some issues with it some years ago. It came from a weak core, which you think we'd have a strong core in jiu-jitsu, but I needed to do more planks, having that good stabilization there. I had to do more upper back work because I had a tendency to round my back too much all the time, not just in the gym, but all the time. My back's like always rounded. And then I had to loosen up my hip flexors. My hip flexors are so friggin' tight from sitting too much. And I had to loosen those suckers up because that psoas muscle just links up in there, and I'm just like constantly in that flexed position. Yep. And so as I loosened those up, man, I felt so much better. I remember I used to have trouble going for walks. Literally, I'd go for a walk, 30 minutes, bro. I'd have to like sit down, and my back would be like spasming, low back. As I loosened those things up and had better posture and everything else, then it's like, oh man, I felt fine. I can go for a walk for a couple hours, no problem. And so, again, maintenance. And again, think about it this way. When you do jiu-jitsu, you're in a feedback loop where as you do a technique, you put it into rolling and you try it out. You see what works, what doesn't work based on the feedback. And then from that feedback, you then begin to tweak and adjust things. As you begin to feel problems with your body arise, as you begin to feel issues, it's then time to listen to that feedback and then adjust your training or add things in and do things and tweak things out. Just like you would, if, for instance, if you go to training and you're rolling, all of a sudden you find out all that candy and garbage food you're eating is bad for you, and it's really messing your body up. You take out sodas out of your diet, all of a sudden you're losing weight, you got better cardio, you start to do some strength training, you feel stronger, you get an injury, you begin to do rehab for that injury. It's like, oh man, this is really helpful for my knees, everything else. It's just constant adjustment. It's feedback for your body as well. So jiu-jitsu gets you in tune with yourself. And I think if you run into injuries, use it as a chance to improve. This has happened to me numerous times where as I come back better from injuries because I become aware of what's going on with the body. I dive deep into like, why does it work this way? Okay, these are the things that I have to sort of do for maintenance later on.
I don't think there's any way to avoid an injury.
No.
You can reduce the risk.
Reduce the risk, increase your odds of not.
Increase, yeah. And some of it's dependent, like we've talked about before, rotating the tires too, right? Change positions that you work, maybe if you're a bottom guy, try to play a little top game or, it just rotating the tires is another thing to do, positions, changing positions. And then like you said, you want to create that range of motion as well. Yeah. So you want to be able to not have somebody stacks you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have the capacity to be in that range and be okay. So you want to, on your own volition, get yourself there first and be comfortable, kind of get rolling back. So doing some different positions, working a warm up or mobility routine that's going to like promote some of these movements even a warm up is great, just getting your body prepped for those things.
Sure.
Just because like if you don't have the capacity to move in that way and somebody forces you there, that's when you're going to be injured. This one's about Chewy. What's up?
You see the one. Click on it.
Huh?
Click on
this one?
Yeah. Sean Barker. That's great. Keep farting.
I don't know. I don't think that's great. I think it's great if you're not on the receiving.
Stop eating terrible food.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember one of my students loved him to death. He comes to the gym one day, and he was a new student at my gym once. And back at this some years ago, comes in, and he's farting. He can't help it. He's farting. He stinks. And I came up to him and said, "Bro," I said, "What'd you eat today?" He's like, "Oh man, I was running late and I stopped and had a gas station hot dog." I was like, "Oh, dude, what a terrible choice." But it's okay. Like I'm of the understanding that most male maturity stops at about 12. So like farts are always kind of funny. So he's farting. I was like, it's kind of funny. They didn't think that bad, right? So he said that at another gym, they would kick him out. They would make him stand in the corner. They'd make him stand like outside, air himself out, but he was pretty embarrassed about it. Because I remember, I remember why. Because I heard someone rip it. I said, "Who farted?" And nobody was fessing up. I said, "Who farted? I want to know." Just because it was a really good loud one, I was like, I want to congratulate you. And he didn't want to say it was him because he didn't want to get kicked out like he did at his other gym, gets stupid.
Look, I mean, be thoughtful of your people that you train with. Don't fart on their face. Sometimes
it happens.
If I have to, like, I'm saying, not if you know it's coming, you just step away from the mat.
Of course. But sometimes you're in the middle of a roll, bro. Some guy puts knee on belly, it's coming out.
You yell out 5 points or some random number when we do that. When you make somebody fart,
2,
like 5, 7 points. Just yell it.
So just watch your treat, buddy.
There you go. Here you go, Chew. What's been the hardest other grappling sport you have fought against? Well, I don't know if
I don't know what it means, Daniel.
I don't know.
What's being the hardest?
I thought I read that different. I thought it was like, what's been the hardest part of grappling? But
I mean, as far as the other grappling sport, wrestling was very tough. Wrestling's a completely different tempo. It's very tough. It's very cardiovascular intense, and you're just going. Wrestling is very much like, it's very fast paced because you can't grip certain things. You think about wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, our matches get longer. So for instance, as you become like a black belt, if you're like an adult, your matches go from 6 minutes as a white belt all the way up to 10 minutes as a black belt. Sometimes 20 minutes in the ADCC or whatever, or unlimited time sometimes. Whereas in wrestling, the time's basically always around this, roughly, give or take, depending on the type of wrestling you're in, is roughly always the same. The only difference is that the intensity goes up. So basically, it's kind of like sprinting. If we sprint for, say, 10 seconds, no matter what, you're basically, our heart rate might be hitting the same percentage of our max heart rate, right? So you're basically, your engine's working at the same level. The only difference is, as you become a better sprinter, you travel further within that 10 seconds, right? You get faster and you go a little bit further. But as far as the actual thing, it's still sprinting, right? It's still the same time, but your distance is going to be there. So what happens is you pack more activity into those 6 minutes or whatever wrestling than you would have when you were younger, because you're just so much better shape and more technical.
Like 2 or 3 minute periods, like high school.
High school is 2 minute periods.
I mean, that's
three 2 minute periods. Yeah, and you're going, and you also got to think about, in wrestling, you can't, like in jiu-jitsu, you basically have a lot of freedom to tangle people up. Doesn't exist in wrestling. So for instance, in high school wrestling, I don't know what the rules have changed now or not, but for instance, you can't, if you're on the ground, let's say like there's a down position where the person's kind of, it's almost like turtled up position. If I'm on top of him, I cannot lock my hands. Because if you lock your hands, you can stall, right? So you're breaking the person down, but you have to keep your hands separated the whole time.
I got you.
And so it's just a different animal. So there's a lot more restrictions on what you can do.
All right. Ruben
Lopez. Thank you for the blessing, brother. Appreciate that kind generosity. What's the question?
All right. What's your opinion on ice bath sauna intervals for recovery after BJJ? I've been nonstop training gi and no gi for an upcoming tournament. Any tips for body recovery?
I'll throw some out, and then you can throw some out.
Sure.
So check this out. Ice bath and sauna is great. Contrast showers are great. They're very good. If you can do them, knock it out, bro. Those are super good. Here's one of the things that and again, this is, I hate to sound like a broken record, but they're nice things. They're nice things to add on to it. But I think probably two of the biggest ones is diet and sleep. Just stay with me here for a second. A lot of people, again, are not very intentional with the way they eat. And if you think about what's happening, your body is a machine, right? It's a biological machine that breaks down nutrients and then basically it uses that energy to do things. So when you're packing calories into your body, it's like fuel. So imagine if you gave a car, and you might have a great diet, Ruben. I don't know. I'm assuming that you're like the majority of jiu-jitsu people, which they don't have a great diet. They don't really think about it. It's like, I love training jiu-jitsu, but diet, it's boring. Jiu-jitsu is fun because I got to fight out of a choke. Jiu-jitsu cooking's boring. But if you gave a car junk fuel, you can't expect it to run optimally, right? It's going to break down more often, and if you don't change the oil and things like stuff's going to happen to it. And so the fuel you put in your body is really important. Also, the amount of like nutrients. So for instance, unless you're hardcore keto, fat adapted type person, and you're putting carbohydrates into your body, having the right ratio of carbs and fats is really important so you don't gain weight. And also so you can gain, or you can up the carbs a lot, because the carbs are going to help support the training, and then making sure you're getting enough protein so that your body's going to have the nutrients to help repair your body. And again, depending on what you eat, like I have tons of students that'll come to me and they'll send me their diets. And, again, there's no wonder why their bodies aren't recovering, because they're not giving their body enough protein. It's not getting enough carbohydrates. And so it's just wasting. It's just basically being beat up, and it's just trying to fight with whatever it can do. Right. So it's important to get that nutrients. I can tell you from experience, when my diet is on point, where I'm doing all the things I need to do, I can train so much harder, so much more often. I get more for myself, and I don't get all beat up from it. Not as much. I'm still getting beat up, of course, but I can train with a lot more frequency and volume than I could otherwise. I'm just getting back to my diet I've been on it for a couple of weeks again. I'm always on it, but basically I was just allowing a lot more laxity because when we were moving and all that stuff, it just kind of crept up on me.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I can tell you that I feel much better because of it. Now, along with the diet, sleep's really important. People don't pay attention to their sleep. You'll see people, they go home, and obviously I'm not saying I don't watch people, so I don't know they'd see, but you understand that people go to their house and they'll be doing this all night long, scrolling, watching crap. And, they then just try to go to sleep right after they just got done blasting their eyeballs with blue light, and with stimulation. You need to find a ritual that helps you kind of ease into sleep, and you'll get much better rest. I think you can, for me in some cases, like I can get 6 or 7 hours sometimes. And if it's uninterrupted, like good deep sleep, I'll wake up and I feel like $1 million. Whereas if I get like 8 hours, 9 hours, but I'm like in and out, like it's just not nearly, the quality's different. And so for me, like some of the things that I like to do, I like to take CBD oil, right? Charlotte's Web, it's the stuff that I use. It's actually what I use. Take that. I'll take my shower, and I usually stretch for a little bit afterwards. I like stretching because if I do those long holds, especially after the hot shower, because my muscles will be warm, and doing some long holds, especially in some of my tight areas like hamstrings and stuff, man, my muscles feel so relaxed and my body feels relaxed, because there's a function where if you're letting your muscles relax like that, essentially you're telling your body, hey, there is no threat. There's nothing to, because think about the way your body's wired for survival, right? So again, we understand these different things have different physiological responses. Like if you breathe, mouth breathe like that and really shallow, you're telling your body that it's basically, there's something going on, because your body breathes like that when you're running and chasing or whatever. Well, if you're sitting down in your room or whatever, and you're stretching and letting your body relax and doing some deep, slow breathing, you're telling your body, hey, let's chill out for a little bit. There's nothing going on. There's no tiger to worry about. There's no threat to us where we're here, and your body will begin to be much more relaxed. And again, maybe some people, I've heard so many people, like when you talk about this stuff, I don't have time for that. Like, I bet you do, because we can look at your phone and I bet there's like 2 hours of time worth on this stupid thing where you were scrolling. So just shave off 10 minutes off that stupid stuff. And then, by the way, my phone goes into airplane mode, or you can put it do not disturb. I put airplane mode on. Put airplane mode. I put it where it goes, its designated place, and I don't look at it after that starts. And then when I lay in bed, I start reading. Every now and then I'll listen to like an Audible, like an audiobook too. So you can kind of listen to Audible and you can put the little sleep timer on and just kind of go to sleep like that. But those are really important. And then the little bit of stretching with some deliberate sort of focus on your diet and your sleep. It's really important if you're training with that kind of intensity, because you're training that much. You're training like an athlete, bro. You're not training like a random dude who's just hobbying around. Like training that much, that's like athletic stuff. So you need to treat yourself like an athlete, not just like a regular Joe, an average Joe who's just kind of getting a workout in.
I agree pretty much everything you said. Just a little bit of what I read. I can't remember the article exactly. The sauna is great. It's good for recovery too. Again, you can do some stretching. It relaxes the muscles. The thing about ice baths, a lot of people are starting to use ice baths, and they're not really, if you're like in training camp, you're not really trying to you're trying to keep your body together. It's good for pain, inflammation stuff, but it's not very conducive for like building muscle. Right. So if you're,
because it stunts the hormetic effect, right?
Yeah. So it does. I can't off the top of my head can't say the exact process, but what I've read is it's good for like recovery in like when you're beating your body up day in, day out. It's good for recovery, but it's not like if you're like, hey, I'm trying to get to a point of peaking kind of thing. Like I'm trying to build muscle, build strength. It's not terribly conducive for that. So, I mean, I think it could be useful from time to time.
I'll say this too. You got to be careful when you're talking about sauna as a recovery, because like sauna's tough on your body. You're sweating out a lot. Like I can tell you that, like, if I was training hard, maybe I get into the sauna a little bit, but I'm not going to get in there and like really go crazy in the sauna, because I'm getting in there. My body's getting is heating up. I'm burning calories, sweating through stuff, burning through minerals through that sweat. Like that's just me. Like for instance, I don't mind. I like using the sauna sometimes just to kind of relax and sit in there, 20 minutes or whatever. But I can tell you that some of the most, I remember, here's an example. I was so exhausted. I was one of the guys had a fight, and he had to cut weight. So I was going to be a sauna sit buddy. Right. So I'm sitting in the sauna with him. He was in there for about 35 minutes, and we would, like break in and out a little bit. I remember when I was done, I was wiped out. Absolutely. I was like, I just drained through a lot of water. So again, you got to be careful, because if you're sweating a ton in the gym, train hard in the gym, and then you're going into the sauna and blasting yourself in the sauna, you got to be mindful with it. So just kind of make sure you give it like, it's not something I would do every single day for like a long, long time. Again, it's good for if you're depending on how you feel. If you feel great, then that's fine, but it's working for you. But if you start to feel maybe, man, I feel exhausted, well, maybe you take the sauna out like a day, every other day or something. Maybe you can still do your ice baths, right? But then take the sauna out a little bit and just see how you feel and test around. Yeah, and I think like a good option is even lower temperatures. Like we have infrared sauna, which is supposed to be like a deep heat, to use the infrared heat to get into the muscles. So it's a less it's less temperature, basically. It's like 155 or something like that. It's not very high. So, and that's something you can kind of, if you use it to stretch and cool down and kind of get your mind right, it could be useful for those things. But don't go in there and like super hot sauna. It'll just wear you out. You'll be tired. Think about it, like a lot of times when they do these studies on saunas, they're not having athletes do it. They're not having like hardcore athletes get in there and blast themselves. Maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't read all the studies, but from the studies I've seen about it, they're not having hardcore athletes blast themselves in the sauna as they're trying to train for big tournaments or whatever. So you want to keep that in mind. There are tons of benefits from them, but they all have their place.
There was one about cutting weight or how to choose your weight class. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. And I don't think there's necessarily a formula, but is there a formula used to determine what weight class you should be in? So maybe, do you think of a way that maybe the lowest you'll go or the highest you'll go? Is there something you'll play around with? Or
well, I mean, it depends on you. If you wanted to be really technical about this, you could go get your body fat scan and stuff like that, and you could basically base it off of that and find like a healthy body weight that you could get to that would then be in there. Here's the thing that I think it's interesting about weight classes. I've traditionally done better when I'm a little bit heavier, and I go in and not my leanest. Now I still do well when I'm lean, but like
Okay.
when I like when I go into like say super heavy, when I'm actually a little undersized, I'm faster and I don't really cut much weight at all, I do really well. Like some of my, it's funny, like so I've won nogi pans 3 times at 3 different weight classes. I've won at heavyweight, super heavy, and ultra heavy. And when I was super heavy, I weighed in, you know, around 214. Cutoff was 215, so right around the weight, right? And then, but I'm still kind of small for the weight class. And then at ultra heavy, I actually weighed in at 209 for that one. I came in light, so I weighed at 209 at that competition, and I did ultra. What happened was one of my buddies who I was training with leading up to it, I didn't realize we were in the same age bracket, and so we were in super heavy together. So I went up to ultra. I was just like, let's see what happens. So I went in there and competed, did fine. I won it. But I've always done pretty well like that, even since I was a white belt. And then sometimes I've gotten down to really low weight classes and I've struggled because of the way my style is. I do better because I'm a fast grappler. I like to put the pace on. Bigger guys don't move as fast. The smaller you go, the more they move. So a lot of times I lose my speed advantage when I go up against bigger guys. And so for me, a lot of times the actual being up against bigger guys has been more beneficial, where I have a struggle with sometimes little guys because they're all over the place, and it makes me have to shift and change my game. So you have to keep that in mind. What kind of game do you play? I think a lot of times people as far as jiu-jitsu goes, in MMA fighting, it's a little bit different because of punches and the damage that goes on there. But in jiu-jitsu, people overemphasize the importance of cutting weight. Because think about it. How often do you go against someone that's the same exact weight as you every single time in the gym? Probably not every round. Most rounds, you're probably going to be all over the place. You might go with people bigger, smaller, and same weight, whatever. So there's no real formula to it. The one thing that I would say is that if you're going to cut weight for jiu-jitsu, this is my recommendation to you. Be intelligent about it. Pick out the weight class that you want to do far ahead of time. Know if it's going to require weight cutting, and then begin to drop your weight gradually. Again, get on a good diet and slowly remove certain amounts of food so that you can go into a calorie deficit and begin to drop your weight slowly. So this way, like, you can get really close to the weight. You can get nice and lean, cut up, because who doesn't like to have some abs every now and then? You know, I was looking at my pictures from last year. I was like, I kind of want those back. You know, they're still there in a little bit, like they're just kind of blurry. But you know, you get a little bit leaner, right? So it'll be fun. And then on top of that, you'll feel much better when you compete because you'll be at that weight already. A lot of times people try to do these crash cut diets and they feel like death, you know, and there's no reason to need to do that. You just got to be a little bit more intentional with it early on. So you want to make sure you take your time, pick out the weight class early, and know where you want to be ahead of time. If it was something where, let's say you had 2 weeks to do a competition, you had 2 weeks prep, and you were already in pretty good shape, you were already training, which you're going to do a competition 2 weeks. And you know, the weight class was like 10 pounds down, I wouldn't even mess with it. Just stay where you're at, like, to see what happens, because again, you'll be fine. The weight's not that important. It's helpful, it's nice, but it's not that important. You can get by on it, right? Because you probably go with people that are 10 pounds heavier than you and you're training jiu-jitsu anyway, right? Yeah. So again, not a real formula. The things I would consider is, one, how do you roll against people in that weight class that you're looking for, right? So do you do better with people smaller, bigger, you know, that kind of thing? And then also, do you have enough time to prepare for that weight class? If you don't have enough time to do it, then don't worry about it, because you don't want to do these crash cut diets unless you've got like different day weigh-ins where you can weigh in and you've got 24 hours to repair or recover from it. You don't want to do hardcore cuts. And I've done them before. I've done hardcore cuts and got lean and then watered out and done like 20 pounds or whatever, but it's brutal, hard on your body, and you will not be the same person when you're doing that the next day. And then especially if it's the same day weigh-ins, like an IBJJF weigh-in, you don't want to be like trashing your body. You want to be able to say, okay, I'm on weight, I feel ready, I feel good, and I'm ready to go. You want to just be ready to go. You don't want to be thinking about what if I don't make weight, or having to go run laps and sweat and spit in a cup and stuff like that. You want to do all that. You want to be intelligent about it. So this way, when the weight cut, or when the day comes to compete, you're focused on competing, not on like making weight. That's just my thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm. That's good. You need a couple more, Chew?
Let's do a couple more. Yeah,
all
sure.
Right. I'll ask you this one. What do you think about that?
Any tips on strengthening the neck? Man, that's a better question for you, because I don't like, I remember like when I was younger in wrestling, we used to do all those like neck bridges and stuff. Yeah. And then I don't really use those. I just roll, and I don't have a crazy beefy neck, but it's big enough to where, like, if I wear shirts that fit me, I can't get the top button up.
I think you develop some of that through training jiu-jitsu, number one. But preventing it, I've used the iron neck. I think it's good if you have no idea on neck strengthening.
Mm-hmm.
It's fairly safe. It's good. Neck harnesses are okay. You can use bands, even like using like a weight, like off of a bench.
Yeah.
Using like a weight with, you can do some of that stuff.
But be careful.
Yes, you have to be careful. You got to kind of know what you're doing. The safest ones are isometrics. If you want to just basically begin, like take like a play ball or something, or some type of band, even just kind of holding in different positions, like 5 seconds. 10
now here's
reps.
a question for
that's the safest. Isometrics, kind of meaning you're not moving, you're actually just stabilizing and holding.
So with us, I mean, we're constantly doing this. Do you think it's important for us to do more forward or something, or what? Like,
well, we actually do a lot of forward. So it's important. We're actually here, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's important to, let me get back to the mic here. It's important to actually get a good chin tuck, right? Be able to get chin tuck, because a lot of times what happens, these muscles actually here can get, if we're tensing up like this, we overuse those upper traps a little bit. Those can get a little tight. These muscles,
and then you get that like sort of like this posture. So like I think BJ Penn, like it's on flight, like he's like his head's like so forward
head. So the chin tucks, like those type of things, that's a good preset. Like before you're doing any kind of neck strength thing, I'll teach people a good chin tuck position initially, because it's a good stable position for the neck, and then you'll work, side bending or rotations. But then don't neglect the chest. Pecs can get kind of tight a little bit. So working the upper, like the mid trap, the rhomboids, the muscles that stabilize the shoulder blades, that's going to help offset, kind of protect. You think of like an X, like if I look for my body, like an X this way, we're going to have some tightness here and some tightness here in the pec. So neck, pec, and then maybe some weakness or looseness.
What do they call that?
What's that?
Isn't there like a syndrome?
Forward head. I mean, but I think they call it like a celiac cross, what they call it.
Like upper cross or something.
Yeah. So upper cross syndrome, maybe. That's something like, but there's different names. But a lot of times, especially, we sit a ton all the time. We sit and we're doing this stuff, looking at our phone or what have you, or we're driving or we're eating. So all this sitting stuff, we got to try to get that postural, kind of just help those muscles kind of build some symmetry, and also working on the thoracic spine, the mid back, that can be stiff. So working on rolling that out a little bit, because we're always rounded forward. So there's definitely, there's different stuff. So strengthening the neck is part of the puzzle. There's a lot of different areas, and that iron neck is pretty useful. It's expensive, and I would recommend getting the one with the little resistance dial, just because it's the most useful. It's a unique way to strengthen. But there's a lot of other ways, like just even using bands or isometric. So you can probably just get on YouTube and find some things, but you got to be mindful. Got to get a little instruction first, because it can be a little tricky.
Start slow. Yeah,
absolutely. Start slow. Listen to your body for sure. Let's see, Chew. Yeah, I said neck harness was a good one. Yeah, there's some different stuff out there. Let me see. See anything, Chew?
So, move your thing.
Oh, here's this. This might be a good one. Let's do this one. I'll pick one more.
Okay.
And this could be a good question for you, actually, because you have a different criteria. How do instructors generally determine when a student is ready for a belt promotion? And
it's such a there's so much to it, because
what do you value, right?
Well, yeah, the belt is so, like, the meaning of the belt is so ambiguous. I mean, it's not like nobody has a nobody has there's not a universal across the board, every association, every belt, this is what it means, right? It's just not that way. It's ambiguous, and it means different things to different associations, different coaches. For me, I'll give you the idea. There's a time element. Basically, there's a minimum time. Like, I don't care how good you are, I'm not going to give you a blue belt unless you've been here for a while, because part of it is I want to see, the techniques, of course, but then I also want to see who you are. Your character is very important to me. It's very important. I can't promote someone that's being a jerk to their training partners, that doesn't embody the values that I hold important. And my values aren't really crazy. They're not like super out there. They're pretty basic. Like, we train hard, we do our best, we give full effort, and we also take care of the people around us and make sure they're taken care of. And we try to bring something, we try to become we try to better ourselves while we're bettering the people around us. That's to me what it's all about, right? And then as you get better, you then pull the people up with you. This is one of the reasons why, like, if you come in and you see the coaches training, I mean, they're training, and they're also helping out all the newer people too, because that's just what we do there, right? so there's that. Attendance is not really attendance, but just you've been around the gym for a while. Technique, like your ability to show and demonstrate technique, and your ability to roll. Now, again, there are extenuating circumstances. Like, for instance, if I've got like a 50-year-old, I think she's 50, Kathy, and she's a beast. Like she went out and competed, and like she did judo back in the day, and she like launched a woman in competition and stuff. So she's awesome. You know, I'm not going to judge Kathy, 50-year-old woman, on the same sort of yardstick as a 20-year-old like college wrestler, right? That's just a different path, different people. And so I think that you have to have, you know, that unless you just want to make it like, you know, just regurgitate these moves, which I don't want to, you have to sort of account for those things. And so there's a lot of different things that go into the promotions for each person. And then one of the things that I do with my guys is with the upper belts, purple and up, they all get to contribute a vote to the person. So for instance, purple belts can vote on purple belts and blue belts. Brown belts can vote on brown belts. Purple belts and blue belts, and black belts who are black belts, they can contribute, they can make a vote towards any belt, right? Blue, purple, brown, and black, because they are going to be in the gym sometimes and see things that I can't see because we've got a lot of classes, and they'll be able to give me a sense of things that I might not be able to pick up on, and be a set of eyes that are around the gym all the time. And so that makes it easier for me too to understand, like, hey, how's so-and-so doing? Well, like for instance, not this past one, but the last set of promotions, the first set we had coming back from COVID, you know, everybody sends in their votes, and everybody's like voting. Like there was a couple guys like to get to purple belt, they were like, promote this guy already. You know, like I think it was Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin stuff.
They're like, dude, promote this dude already. This guy that use a blue belt, and he's doing great, but promote him. Like we hate getting Gary was another one. Gary's in there. Like when he was a blue belt, they're like, I hate getting beat up by a blue belt. It's time to send him on, you know? And, you know, but Gary and Kevin are both great dudes, you know, so it only makes sense. And so there's a lot of things that can go into it. It really depends on the person, the coach. And so if it's something where, again, I always tell people, you don't need to go up to your coach and say, hey coach, when am I getting promoted? It's not about that, but you can, I think it's very reasonable. And if my guys did the same thing, but hey, what do I need to work on? What's something I need to work on? And if you don't know, could you just kind of give me a look and tell me later on? Could you tell me something I need to shoot for? And so this way you have something to shoot for. You know, I mean, I remember back in the day, like my original coach, there were some faults about him, but there was a couple things he did well. One of the things that he did really well is when he thought someone was getting ready for promotion, he'd say, hey, you're going to be on the chopping block. So if you would pick it up, and I need to see you submitting people, or I need to see you doing this at whatever. Right. For instance, he was like, hey man, like you're close. Like he's like, I'd love to promote you to blue belt, but you have no guard game. And now you're on your back for 3 months. Or I remember when I was getting close to purple belt, he was like, hey, like you need to step up your game and you need to start submitting people because purple belts submit people. I was like, okay. And so I remember I put a purple sweatband on my ankle. So every day I trained, I always saw the purple sweatband, and I was always trying to submit people because like, oh, I got to chase. And again, I don't really care about the belt that much, but it's a neat little feather in the cap. It gave me something to shoot for. And so again, you can talk to your coach and ask that question, but otherwise just show up. And again, those are the things that I use, but they're different for everybody else. So
we did do a podcast a while back.
Philosophy of the belts.
Like you kind of spoke to some requirements, some things you look for at each belt level.
Yeah. So if you check my YouTube channel and you put in like the philosophy of the belts Jiu-Jitsu, there's a video where I talk about basically the 5 belts and kind of what they mean to me and what I look for in each person. That kind of goes into my thinking personally of it. And so you can kind of get an idea of what I think. And I think they're not universal, but I think they're actually pretty close to generally it's what you see. So just some ideas on it.
You gonna do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
There's a quick one that I want to kind of mention. This is important. If you're, this is just about flexibility, or this is for the back specific, but this goes for everything. It says, any advice on how to improve flexibility in the low back? I stretch every session, but no improvements. It's something I'm missing. The main thing I'll tell you, if you're stretching the hell out of something and it's not getting better, it may not be a flexibility issue, may be a strength issue.
Yeah.
So sometimes when muscles are weak, they're going to want to be activated and tense up because they're not able to hold the position. Also look at the opposing muscle. So if it's your low back that feels tight, look at your hips. Right, the hips could be actually
that was my problem
area.
I had tight hips, I had tight hip flexors, So therefore my back was tightening up because what's happening is my hip flexors are sort of pulling my body out of alignment, and my low back was like tensing up to try to keep me in alignment.
Yeah.
And it was just overworked.
So it's possible it's a flexibility issue, but a lot of times it can be a strength issue. And see a physical therapist, someone that can kind of watch your movement, do some quick assessments they can give you. That could literally, like, a lot of times people think I'll just figure it out, I'll Google it or I'll YouTube it. You'll spend so much time doing that. If you go to someone that knows what they're talking about, they could literally give you one session, could just write that, it could put you on the right path. And like, you will spend 3-4 months trying to figure it out, stretching every day, versus 3 weeks and correcting the issue. Yeah. So that's kind of important. And so stretching isn't always just because something tight doesn't mean it needs to be stretched. Right. So
yeah, it's a good point. And that's something that about anything, that's something that as I've gotten older and you realize that the most important, like, you know, I mean, for me, the most important thing that I have, and you know how I am about it, is my time. It's the most important resource I have. I don't get more of it. I can get more of a lot of other stuff, but I can't get more time. And so with that, coaching, if you can find someone that's done it or knows what they're doing, it's like it's like fast forward, because it's like, would you try to go to jiu-jitsu and just figure it out? No, you're going to like hire this person who's an expert that has done this stuff for years and can show you what to do. So if you're broken, feeling messed up, go find a good PT of some sort and like ask them, say, man, like, I'm feeling this. Can you take a look at it? And they can, like, they're like, Eugene will like look at stuff. He'll like watch me, like just seeing stuff move. And he's like, yeah, that's messed up. And yeah, you probably got some tightness here. He sees it. It's like, it's like all of a sudden, like I envision him looking at my body, like everything else is normal, but my body's like in like zeros and ones, like the Matrix. He's just like seeing like screens going like, here's what's wrong with you. You know what I mean? So, do a little investment, it's for yourself and for your body, and it's to save your time. There's nothing more important than that. Go get a PT to look at stuff, give you some exercises, and then run with it and do them religiously. It can be a beautiful thing.
Same thing with jiu-jitsu, right? It's like a cheat code. You get a good coach that knows their stuff, that can really guide you, that's actually knows how to teach as well. We've got guys at the gym that are excellent teachers. I mean, they're maybe not as high level competitors, but they're really good teachers. And they really guide people. They know how to connect and how to really set people on the right path, where you're like, oh man, I'm going to class, I don't feel like I'm getting any better, versus you have a coach that maybe you connect with. Like we had a couple of training partners at the gym for me. Rich Shabowski was one that like I really learned a lot when he was at the gym with us. I learned a lot from him. And even Chad was, because we had a similar build, so I learned a lot from those guys.
Well, it's like I hired a nutrition coach
exactly
to write up my diet last year. I was like, I want to have someone do this, and I paid good money for it. I paid good money for it, but I got the results I wanted, so it was worth it. So,
and you know your stuff, and so you know your stuff, but you also know that like if you're going to value this information. So,
real quick, Blood Allboat was talking about taking the jitters out of caffeine. So he's asking, basically, talking about something I put in my coffee to get rid of the jitters. So 2 things on coffee jitters. One, I don't drink coffee on an empty stomach. Do not do it. Both the acidity sometimes bothers it, and also I feel like it makes me shaky. It's almost like if you drink beer when you're like dehydrated, it just hits you different. I don't drink coffee on an empty stomach. I always have it with food, right? Which helps, which is beneficial for the food too. A lot of times, I know this sounds funny, I don't have coffee in the early morning. I actually have coffee like early afternoon. So usually I have my first training session, and then as a part of my recovery, I'll drink my first cup of coffee. Third, I don't drink much coffee. I drink a small amount. So like, for instance, if you look at those things where they're talking about, it's this, 1 cup of coffee is equal to this much caffeine. They're talking about 6 to 8 ounces of coffee. They're not talking about like, I mean, you go to like a Starbucks or something, and besides the fact that those things are super over caffeinated, you go to a coffee shop, the small is usually like 12 ounces. The extra small is typically going to be an actual cup of coffee. So you're getting a cup and a half with just the small, and you see people crushing caffeine. And so a lot of times I tell people to ease up off the caffeine and use less, and you'd be surprised at what you can do with it. Because a lot of times we become addicted. I mean, it is what it is. It's a drug, and people don't think of it. People don't think of it as a drug. They're like, oh, it's just coffee. It's like, or it's just energy drinks. I'm like, like, take it out a little bit, right? And if you feel like you can't, then you have dependency, and that's not a good thing. but back off the caffeine a little bit, right? And use a little bit less of it to see how you do. Again, if you're drinking a very little amount, then no big deal. But if you're drinking a lot, back off of it. Like go with 1 cup instead of like 4 cups or whatever. Just try 1. See how you do. And if you need a little bit of oomph for training, just go bike for a minute. Your blood will flow. You'll be fine. And then the thing you can add to coffee that has helped me out before is theanine. So theanine has a calming effect. It's a lot of times found in things like green tea in amounts. So you can take some theanine and then drink your coffee like as you're taking, with it. And that's helped me out with sometimes with focus and also with reducing the jitters. But again, if you're getting a lot of coffee jitters, sometimes it's too much coffee, sometimes it's not enough food, because that can play a role into it if you actually look at what the body, what coffee and caffeine does to the body physiologically. So just a couple things maybe to help you out with the jitters.
Yeah, tea's a great option too. You can, substitute a little tea instead of some coffee. That can be a little bit of a.
Yeah, I had a guy one time, or even an energy drink, right? For instance, I had a guy years ago, Christian. He was a military guy, so he's working crazy hours. He was a major in the military. And I remember him coming in one time and he was, exhausted. Now, this guy's in good shape, but he was rolling and he was just gassed out. And so I'm asking him, I was like, all right, you tired? He's like, hey, man, I'm so tired. I can't figure out what it is. So I'm asking him, and he's got a really busy schedule during the day. And I was like, then he's telling me that when he comes to the gym to try to give himself perk up, he drinks the energy drink.
Yep.
And he shows me the energy drink. The energy drink's got 250 milligrams of caffeine. It's a lot of caffeine to have late in the evening, not only because it's going to screw up your sleep, but then it's a big dump of caffeine, and caffeine it's going to raise your idle, your body's idle, right? So you're going to reach that red line quicker. So I told him, I was like, hey man, why don't you try this? Have a cup of green tea. Just you'll get maybe 25 milligrams of caffeine, right? Very little. Just have a cup of green tea. See how you feel. Comes up to me. He's like, yeah, I didn't have that same, like, I want to like break through the wall like the Kool-Aid man to like when I got into the gym. But once I got rolling, I had more energy and I could stay on the mats the whole time. Right. And so again, sometimes we get, I'm guilty of it too. We get addicted to that feeling of being really like basically being high. Like when we have coffee, like, oh man, I'm so energetic.
Revved
whatever.
Up, man.
Well, you see people like when they go to the gym, like I can't lift with energy. I can't do like pre-workout or anything.
Yeah.
Just, it makes me feel terrible. But some guys, they can't lift without it. And I'm like, if you can't, like I literally say, why don't you lift without it? Oh, I can't do that. I can't lift up in pre-workout. I'm like, then you have dependency, my friend. And that's me. I don't like to be dependent on stuff, but so just keep that in mind. Just a couple tips for you there with coffee, along with the theanine tip.
Awesome. Chew, you want to let's give a shout out to our sponsors.
Yeah, guys. So
real quick,
appreciate you guys for being here. Sponsors, if you guys were listening to me when I was talking about the sleep aid stuff or the sleep schedule, CBD, I use Charlotte's Web. It's the company been using for several years. Big fan of it because of the consistency. Let's watch that number here.
It's gonna stay up.
It's not gonna stay up. They're gonna be like, oh no, they're putting the promos out there. Look, I always say to people, everything that's here is something I use or wear or whatever.
For sure.
But Charlotte's Web, charlottesweb.com, promo code is Chewjitsu, say 15% on the order. I'm a big fan of the stuff because if you look, there's a little thing over here and it's third-party tested. So with CBD, it's unregulated. So you can go get some CBD oil and you have no clue what's actually in there. And it can give you varying degrees of results. I remember hearing Joe Rogan talk about that on one of his podcasts. He was saying that like he used some and he was like blazed and like high. Sure. And then sometimes you use it, you feel nothing. Yeah. And so I like this stuff because it's consistent. It's actually what you're going to get. So again, being deliberate with things. If I'm going to measure my coffee, if I'm going to measure my food, if I'm going to train in a certain way, I want to make sure that the stuff that I put in my body, the supplements, is actually like what it says it is.
Yep.
Epic Roll. If you guys are in the neighborhood looking for some gear of any sort, whether it's gis, rash guard, shirts, whatever, epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu, 15% off the order. I'm a big fan of his designs. If he has his Velcro-less shorts, I freaking love those shorts.
They're the best.
I don't even want to wear any other shorts now because those are the ones I want to wear all the time because they're just so comfy and they're nice. I hate dealing with the Velcro, and it's so sad when you get a good pair of Velcro shorts. It's almost like I don't want to get too attached. Because I don't want to get attached to the shorts because you find a good piece of training gear, and then if you get the Velcro shorts after 6 months or something, all of a sudden that Velcro is gone, and then you got to say goodbye, and it's not fun.
Yep. Give Manscaped a shout out too.
Manscaped, shave your beard down to your balls.
B2B.
It's so funny when and if you guys listen to the podcast, you guys know this. Whenever we get people that want to sponsor the podcast. First off, all you guys that are leaving right now, you guys miss out on the random stuff we start talking about at the end of the podcast.
Good amount of people are sticking around.
I know it's funny, but the so Manscaped, when we brought them on, I remember like first off,
they're good shit. I love it.
Probably we only have probably less than a third of the sponsors that have tried to get on the podcast. Actually, less than that. We would like far because we get so many random.
That's some really good
like
ones.
I remember we had that one protein bar company. That protein bar was disgusting. They sent us this protein bar and they're like, "Can we push this on the show?" And I remember like I opened the package and it just crumbled. I was like,
"Did you notice like your mouth was like dry,
bro?"
I was like, I have to drink some.
I didn't eat it. As soon as I opened it, it was just like dust and crumbled. I was like, I'm not eating this crap. And then they sent the protein powder, and on the protein powder, like there were like a bunch of misspellings, and it was chocolate. It was chocolate flavored.
Yeah.
But on the back it said it tastes like delicious vanilla cake. I was like, so I just gave it to some students. But Manscaped, so basically the way that the process works whenever we bring a sponsor on, basically they have to give it to us first. I don't do reads because I don't want to be like the robot up here. It's like, oh, you're going to love it. It's so
not
great.
That you don't do reads, you can't do reads. There's something like your brain doesn't work that way. It's like we've tried like kind of
I think in tangents
a topic of like, all right, let's stick to a topic on this thing, and we couldn't do it.
So
we're just
I think
we just tell them like we're just going to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Well, I mean, the thing of today's podcast, we went from grips to middle-age crises.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Right, of course. But with Manscaped, they sent the product over and I used it. And again, resistantly, because I'm thinking like their whole thing is like ball grooming, right? I mean, the actual, if you look on it right here, their little thing, it's like these little hands like
cupping.
It hands cupping a set of balls. So, I was kind of resistant to it. I was like, I don't think so. And then I used it on like, Jess used it on my back and stuff to get rid of my old like fur back. And I used it in my beard, used it elsewhere below the belt. It's actually a good product. So again, I'm a fan of everything that Manscaped sent. I've liked everything from the actual trimmer that's, waterproof and all that stuff down to their cologne, down to everything I've used that they've sent me has been amazing. So if you want to check them out, they sell really good products for men's grooming. It's cool to have some men's only like focused products out there.
Yeah, and this stuff smells pretty nice too.
Awesome.
That's a good thing.
Smells like a man.
Smells like a man.
Smells like a man. It's manly. But you can get them at manscaped.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20. Save 20% on the order and you get free shipping. It's a pretty sweet deal. And if you guys, couple things, if you guys ever want to know what's going on, first things first, like for instance, the camp last week or yesterday, not last week, we just sold out of the 20 spots and we sold out in 24 hours. If you guys ever want to know what's going on, like at first, sign up on my email list at jiujitsu.net. There's a little button that says free ebook. You click that, you'll be on the email list and you can join the True Crew email list. I try to give some, I offer things like that in the camps and courses and everything else, but I try to make them fun and entertaining as well. And then if you guys want to check out our Patreon for the podcast, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We have a couple tiers there that offer some different stuff. And again, along with that, we have videos and audio files where I guess not audio files or videos too, but we chat with the different guests that we have, or we have chats that have never been released online, and everything from, we've got some roles on there, narrated roles, some stretching videos. So if you guys are interested in stretching, there's some stretching videos. Eugene's got a couple good warm-up videos on there that you can check out, which could be useful to you. He took the class through a warm-up and we recorded it, and you can check that stuff out if you want to. So if stretching and warm-up is something you want to look at, that could be useful to you. And you can get that at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And again, you can subscribe and cancel anytime you want to. So that's that. So with that said, I appreciate everyone for joining us today. I appreciate you sticking around through the maelstrom that was at the beginning with weird basement dwellers, but appreciate you guys.
I think it says something about the people that listen to us, that they're, for the most part, they're really, they enjoy, and they'll go through some adversity.
We'll deal with this together. Yeah. Well, also, I think it's pretty, to me, like when I see what goes on YouTube a lot of times, I think it's actually pretty good considering, like, that's the first real time we've ever had like a real problem.
That's crazy though.
Like, that's good because, like, think about this. A lot of times on YouTube, people are just lurking and they just like say stuff. Like, that's the first time we've ever really had any problems with any of our live streams. Yeah. That's pretty good.
But, we have, obviously there's people that come in just to kind of get a rise out of others, and everybody was really thank you guys for tuning in, and we appreciate the support as always, because there's always jerks out there.
I don't. It doesn't really sweat. It doesn't really bother me. I think it's more. It's like it's entertaining in like a pathetic way.
Oh,
It's like it's not like it's not sweat off my back because nobody's like no one pays attention. Like when you do something like that, it's like someone's like, "This what an idiot."
You're like, Eugene, get it together, sir. Get together. No, I was like, dude, I hate that.
You were like trying to click.
I was like clicking it. I think you click it once and it knocks it out. But it
was still.
But guys, thank you all so much. We appreciate you. We'll be back next week with another episode, and I'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.